From the Hanging with Web Show TV's Bargain Basement Studio in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, it's Pillow Talk with Willow Schuyler.
Will you take me to Winnipeg?
I will, someday. Toronto, Montreal, Quebec, Winnipeg.
Now what's this guy doing up here in Manitoba?
He was holding the map up.
Every salvage mission that's been through this system has disappeared. Even those old pirates out at Winnipeg Drift say it's cursed.
Cursed. Winnipeg's got a great ballet. Have a good time, I swear to God.
Sweet guinea pig of Winnipeg! They've taken over our company!
Balderdash! I never agreed to that!
I should have stayed in Winnipeg, you know? I had a nice gallery, 3 paintings on the wall.
Are you kidding? And you look back. Born home, Quebec. Drafted out of the juniors in the 5th round to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Played for a year with the Leafs, then traded to the Winnipeg Jets, then to Calgary, then to Boston.
Wow.
So Winnipeg must get pretty cold up there.
That's it! Back to Winnipeg!
Hey everyone, welcome to Willow's Pillow Talk. I am your host, Willow Schuyler. And I didn't know this until today, but apparently it's International Steampunk Day, so hence the hat.
I
put a feather in this or something.
I
don't know if that counts.
I totally should have planned something, but yeah. There's my costume for the weekend when I was helping out with the virtual Super Friend celebration. So at least that counts that I was in steampunk. Tom, nice to meet you.
You too. Listen, so was that a Melrose Place clip?
Yes. Yes. My husband's a huge.
My God.
My husband loved that show.
What a show! We could do a show on Melrose Place, man. I mean,
I think that would be between you and my husband because I
oh my
really
God, that was amazing to see. Because I knew that guy had been in other things, but I was like, wait a minute, that's Melrose Place. Right.
He was the only one I liked. Was the only one on that whole show that I liked.
I don't know that any of them were supposed to be likable. I don't even think that. I mean, especially when you got to about season 3 and it just went left, and it just became this bizarre soap opera. You know, this woman comes back from the dead, and it's just like, what is happening in Melrose Place right now?
All of like Aaron Spelling's stuff, though.
I mean, because it was a spinoff from Beverly Hills 90210, and 90210 wasn't weird. I mean, it was weird in its own right, but it wasn't like weird, like Back from the Dead. Like, you remember the kid shot himself in the first episode. They didn't bring him back in like episode 12 and be like, hey, I'm still here. But yeah, Melrose Place was that was something. That was something. Kudos to a Melrose Place clip.
It was a bizarre show.
Yeah. I was all about Sydney when they brought the redhead in. I was like, yep. We'll be fine to watch the rest of this.
Yeah, well, she was crazy too, though, wasn't she?
100%.
Again, that sounds like any Aaron Spelling show, though. It's like there always has to be someone crazy.
Okay, this doesn't feel right. I can't sit on this side.
Uh-oh.
It's like the side of the bed, right? You have your side of the bed, and that's it.
I always sit on the other side, so I feel like weird because I feel like I'm looking, I don't know. So there. So when he's able to join, he will except for the logo's on my head now, so
I can I'll remove it. They're going to be our new,
because somebody will know and then put the thing on and then everybody will be there.
I'll plug them in a moment, but yes, Suncoast Fan Fest is our new sponsors. Seeing how you guys, Tom, were you at the con that that Brandon and Nicole were at over the weekend?
I haven't been to a con since January 2020. I went to Albuquerque right before everything hit the fan. And so that was the last con that I was at. I had a bunch scheduled that all just got canceled. And there was a few that were going to be potentials for this year, but they were just like, nope, it's not happening. The things aren't happening fast enough. So it's all got dropped. And actually, I'm going back to Albuquerque on Thursday. So Albuquerque's back, and they invited me out again. So we're going to make up for lost time with Albuquerque. And then I've got like 5 other shows that invited me out for like August, September, October, November. It's like, wow.
Fantastic.
So yeah, so it's I had planned on doing like no shows this year, like again, but all of a sudden they were like, nope, we're going. Come to the show. I'm like, okay.
I have to live vicariously through you guys because and all your pictures, because Manitoba's still closed down until further notice. So, I mean, there's talks of, allowing us to travel without having to, like, as long as we're fully vaccinated. Right. But it's just like, when's the next step? When are we actually going to start opening? When can I go to a movie?
Yeah, I'm in Michigan, so in fact today I just ran to the liquor store before I came here so I could get some chocolate. Hershey's chocolate, the official sponsor of tonight's show. Yeah. And and I actually, as I was about to go in, I realized I didn't have my mask, but I'm vaccinated, so I'm like I'm over that. But when I opened the door, I realized that even the sign, there was no sign on the door anymore that says you have to have a mask. So basically down here, we're all over it. And we're just like, okay, we're moving on. It's just what's happening now.
As soon as vaccinations were available, for like the masses, like as soon as they opened it for everybody, then they kind of lifted most of the mandates as far as masks were concerned.
Okay. Yeah,
and still there's a lot of people wearing them, which is fine. Sure. Like, do what you want to do. I'm not gonna say that, but like at this point, I'm so stoked that in teaching summer school, I don't have to have it on my face when I talk to children. I'm just like, woo, and I can see their faces too. It's great.
Yeah. I know it's still so weird seeing some of my coworkers on their lunch break not wearing their mask. I'm like, oh, that's what you look like.
There was a kid like all year I hadn't seen their face, and then we went outside for like our block party end of the year thing, and he didn't have his mask on, and I was like, oh. He's like, why are you staring at me? This is like legitimately the first time I've seen you without your mask.
Yeah,
he really didn't look anything like I thought he would.
I swear, like, you need to have like headshots of all your students during roll call. Speaking of classrooms, Nicole, you did a panel just over the weekend.
It was so much fun to be back. It was so much fun to talk to don't turn that off. I'm hot. To talk to people that were excited about comics again. And although the turnout was kind of small, but really, like, by the time you talk to everybody, start sharing what you know, then other people are talking about what they know too. And it's fun. So it was fun.
Yeah. And that panel is up on your page.
It's up on the Comics in the Classroom page. So
I will definitely be watching it later, for sure.
And the most awesome part is that I got to share the panel with Nisha Mulchin.
I think that's how you say her name. Yeah.
And so she is the founder of Diversely Geek, and she is she opened her nonprofit, and so she's working towards the mental health awareness through and coping through fandoms and through the things that we nerd out over, and how it kind of helps us cope and helps us find safe spaces. So it was super cool to hear her neuroscience.
She is a blast to have to bring on the show too, and I swear to God, sometimes Tom, I apologize right now if our conversation goes 3 hours. sorry.
Have you seen the
We
clown
forgot to mention, clear your schedule for the rest of the night because I don't know if you're going to go to bed.
I'm the one that has to like tell Jim Noble to shut up and like, dude, the show's over, man. 2 hours, we're done. Like, stop talking. Save it for next time. So, but whatever. It's whatever we want to do tonight is fine.
So, Tom, what is your thought though on comics and using them to help educate our young?
I mean, I guess it's a vague, it's kind of a vague question, but I mean, I know for me, for example, this is one of the things for me, and I feel like it's kind of changed over the years. Is I remember when I was a kid and I was reading comics, and this would have been like in the 70s, 80s when I was kind of, still a kid, whatever that means. And I would read comics and there would be words in the comics that I'd be like, what the hell does that mean? I literally don't know what that means. But within the context of the story and what was happening, about 9 times out of 10, I could figure out what that word meant. So just from from the whole idea of like, kids should be reading. I used to read books all the time, all that kind of stuff. But comics really never, like, they were meant for kids, I guess, to some concept, but they never talk down to kids. Like if you read old comics, man, it's verbiage. I mean, there's a lot of words. There's a lot of stuff that's like maybe not. It's not that it's not appropriate, but it's like it might be over people's heads. But it kind of pushed you mentally to be like, I don't know what that means. I have to figure it out. And comics really did that in a great way for me. It's different from seeing the word and seeing the word placed within the context of an image.
Yeah.
So I think comics have a really unique ability to teach a lot of things, both just from an English standpoint, from following a story through images is a skill, because I know people that are like, dude, I don't understand how to like follow the boxes. It doesn't make sense to me. And I'm like, well, this is where you go. You go here, you go here, you go here. And part of that is art too, the artist, because the artists need to be able to make the story flow for them. So there's art in comics. There's literacy in comics. There's all kinds of stuff in comics. So, in fact, our Legend of Oz book, the Legend of Oz: The Wicked West, was actually used in an English class somewhere in New York. I get invited to an Oz convention out there every year, and so our books ended up being part of their curriculum. I don't know exactly what they were using it for, but they were like, "Yeah, we use your books in our class," and I'm like, whoa, that's crazy, because I'm a D+ student in English in high school. So make sure that they know anything's possible, man. Anything's possible.
Well, I think what Nicole is doing, like breaking down books, and comics are more than just superheroes. As you're a writer,
Oh yeah.
He says with the superheroes behind him.
But with Big Dog Games, you do a variety of things. So,
sure.
But like she likes to break down the stories and take lesson plans with the kids and stuff.
The point is that they still have to learn what's on the standard. So if I can take what they're reading and what they're interested in and something that's a little bit easier to digest and put a standard with it, I'm still teaching what they need to know.
Sure.
Hi, Kyle.
It's good to see you.
So,
yeah, and Kyle's watching from Holland, by the way.
Yeah.
We have all kinds of
in Holland.
Akio, good to see you. Fellow steampunker. He does a lot of like Asian style steampunk though, and it's really neat. I love it. I love his outfits. Hey, Carl, good to see you.
So
that's McAvoy Productions. Good to see you. Glad you stopped by. And
I don't know what that is.
I'm not sure what that means, but hi anyway.
That looks Russian with the backward R. Yeah.
It's hello. It's hi something. I don't really know. I can't. My Russian is. It's Privyet. I know it's Privyet.
She had a former boyfriend who was Russian. So.
Oh, and I took Russian in college. How useless was that for me? I live in Florida.
Hey, you know what? I should have paid attention to my grandfather when he was speaking Ukrainian to me, and
so it translates to "Hello, guys." Good old Russian to English translation. It's "Hello, guys."
But you were saying,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, I mean, no matter what anybody says, you're evaluated on everything you do for the rest of your life. So if the evaluation that you have to take at the end of the year is about the standards that you were supposed to be taught in school, and if I can teach you those standards through comics that you can understand, you have the concept, you have the skill that the standard is asking you to have, and then you may or may not read at grade level, which is a huge problem, but at least you have some way of taking what's in front of you and understanding at least parts and portions of it. And so if I can get you to be at least literate, then that's above and beyond what we are currently having. So this is like a 1980s, like probably number, but there are 1993, I think, 70 million Americans that are functionally illiterate, which means they don't even read well enough to read the back of a medicine bottle. And we have, I think the numbers are in the 80s now of people who never read a book after high school. They never crack open a book. And now, granted, I know people read. I'm sure they read because they read stuff on the internet and they read all kinds of stuff that probably don't know how to decipher whether it's true or not. But that's a whole nother show. But if they're not reading at all, I mean, even stuff that you like to read, like I try really hard to read the stuff that I love. I have like 60 comic books that I'm behind on.
And we have the Oz book, by the way.
And all of that, like I have to still read all of the Oz books. But I find myself filling my time with other things instead of reading. And I'm realizing now that that's probably not the best way to live my life. But I also realize I'm tired and sleep is important. So I'm another person that hasn't picked up a book since college, probably. That wasn't a young adult book and not something I taught to my kids. But I try.
Yeah.
I think the difference is I can read. Well, most of the time, anyways.
And I'm the same way. It's like people at cons will be like, "So what do you read?" Like, and they're not asking me like, "What do I read in comics?" They're asking me, "What do I read?" Like, where's your inspiration come? Like, what do you read? And I'm like, I don't have books, man. I just don't. And here's the crazy part is I've tried. Like I used to read when I was a kid. Like, I mean, they had contests in class. So, like you read so many books and earn your stars and whatever. I would read all the time. I reached a point where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's almost like I burned myself out. And so the only thing I would read from that point on would be like because this is before VHS and before streaming stuff, so you couldn't get movies, right? So I would read the adaptions of books like Gremlins and Battlestar Galactica and stuff like that. I would be reading these adaptions, and then that kind of overlapped with my comic book reading. And then comic book reading just kind of took over everything. And I really struggled to go backwards to read like a fiction book. Like I can read like history and like someone's biography or whatever. That's like completely different. But to read like fiction is almost impossible for me. And I've tried. I've even gone back to the old standard. I was like, you know what? I love the Da Vinci Code, the movie. I'm going to go read the book because this should be pretty cool. And I'm just like, I can't do it. And it's not because I can't read it. It's because it's not engaging to me. My mental pathways have changed for what I'm getting out of the time that I'm putting into this. So I get it. I get the people that are like, yeah, I don't read books. But there's other stuff to be reading beyond like, these terrible headlines on your Facebook page that lead you to articles that you don't read anyway, or if you do, they're written so poorly that it's like you're just feeding your head literal nonsense, like not just even the content, but the way that it's written. It's just like, this is all garbage. And that's what fills so many people's heads now, because that's what they do every day. They're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, Instagram, whatever, and they just follow these rabbit holes to these horribly written articles.
Well, that's what we talk about, not necessarily knowing what's credible and what's not.
Or they don't read it at all. They just see the headline and they think they know what the article says.
We live in the headline era for sure, 100%.
Absolutely. See, in high school, I used to I would constantly take out books out of the library. I think I lived in the library for the most part. But yeah, I took out Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Dracula. Yeah, I read all those stories. And it was funny because the librarian even said to me, she goes, I haven't seen anybody take out Dracula in years. And I was like, I wanted to read it. I've heard so many good things about it, so I wanted to read it.
Do yourself a favor and go find the reviews. I don't know. Maybe it's on Amazon. Find the reviews for Dracula, Bram Stoker's original Dracula. There's reviews on there that are like, why did the writer decide to write in this form of language? And I'm like, I can't take you seriously. Please tell me this is a joke. But the review is written so well that you're just like, oh my God, somebody really doesn't understand that this book is 100+ years old.
This is kind of off topic, but when you talk about reviews, if you want enjoyment, go on Amazon and read the reviews of the gummy bears. What is that brand? Gold.
Haribo.
Yeah, the Haribo. Go read the reviews on them. You might piss yourself.
Well, review writing has become it's become an art form now. None of it is legitimate. I shouldn't say none of it. I would say 50% of it isn't legitimate. It's just people that are like, I'm going to go write reviews about ridiculous things, and this is going to be what I'm going to do today. And some of it is super massively creative and crazy and funny. There's people that review those shirts that have the howling coyotes on them and stuff. I mean, it's there's no reason for you to do that, but they're just having a good time. It's become creative writing to write nonsense reviews about often nonsense products. But in the case of Bram Stoker's Dracula, they were like, yeah, I couldn't get into this. I don't know why he chose to write it this way. I'm like, oh God.
Do they know how
God help us.
it was written?
It's
I'm gonna go look at that review.
See my husband, and they're like, oh well, if it was creative liberty is taken by the director to have it set in 1600.
Right.
Me and my husband, we were talking about Shakespeare, and he's like, there's no possible way that he actually spoke in that language. I'm like, that's Old English. Yes, they actually spoke that way. And he goes, there's no, having a conversation like that doesn't make sense. I'm like, well, no, of course, now it's not going to make sense.
But the thing about Shakespeare is it's not supposed to be read, it's supposed to be watched.
Listen to. Yeah, it's a oratory thing. You're supposed to hear it happening, and all this kind of stuff.
But yeah, no, I even have some of I have a book of stories written by Edgar Allan Poe as well. And again, he's like, there's no way that people actually spoke like this. And I'm like, dude, do your research. The Victorians were pretty interesting. They had their own language.
What's that?
Reviews? Do you read reviews on Big Dog Inc?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Do you skip over the negative, or do you read them as well?
No. I love to read the negative ones, because 50% of the time the negative ones are, you can immediately see that either the person who did it clearly did not read this book, or just didn't understand anything that was happening. I once read a review for The Legend of Oz, and it was a reasonable review. The review was okay, I don't know. Their shtick was like, hey, three girls, reviewing comics or something. I don't remember what it was, but they would all kind of talk about pieces of the thing. And then one of them goes, yeah, I really liked it, but I don't understand why they had this random lion in the book. And I'm like, random lion? How do you not know the Cowardly Lion is a legitimate, like, I didn't make up the Cowardly Lion. So, some of these reviews are really interesting. I once listened to a guy, two people were talking about my books, and they both liked the book, but one of them clearly wanted to find all the problems with the book. Like it was almost like it was too good. So I was like, nah, it's not that good. I have to find all the problems. And so he starts talking about these things like, so I have a speedster named Electric Youth. This is Critter back here, this book that we're talking about. So there's a speedster named Electric Youth, and he's in Michigan, and he's talking to somebody, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm going to go deliver this to somebody down in Florida. It'll only take a few minutes, because he's fast like the Flash. And so I had to kind of emphasize that, I had a time frame. Like it was like, hey, Michigan, whatever, 7:22, p.m. And then when he got down to Florida, it said Florida 7:27 p.m. or something like that. And the point is that he went from there to there in 5 minutes. That was the point. The guy in the review was like, yeah, but the writer clearly didn't do his research because Michigan is not in the Eastern time zone. And I'm like, you're an idiot. You're already an idiot because I'm living in Michigan and it's in the Eastern time zone. And the guy, his partner, was like, I don't know about that, dude. He's like, no, Michigan is not. And so they actually went and looked it up on their computer while they were live. And they were like, oh yeah, I guess he's right. Well, I guess so. I mean, I guess that's fine. I'm like, you just got called out for moronic, nonsense. And it's like, well, I guess it's fine then. So yeah,
that's the other problem with our society, though, is it's like you literally have
you have all the answers.
Right here.
All the answers. Yeah.
How hard is it to figure out where your time zones are?
That is a pet peeve of mine where I will like someone will ask me something and it's something that I know for sure. It's like, yeah, it's this, and they're like, oh yeah, maybe, and it's like, no, it's not maybe. It's it is.
Yeah, it's a crazy time. I mean, most of the time we get pretty good reviews. There are often times where we get confusing reviews like those. And then there's the handful that just literally, like, you can tell that they didn't like it, which is fine because we do so much stuff that not everything is for everybody. If you like Critter, that doesn't mean you're going to like Penny for Your Soul. If you like Penny for Your Soul, doesn't mean you're going to like Antoinette. It doesn't cross over. So, clearly what happened is somebody tried a book, and thank you for trying it. We appreciate it. But it wasn't for them. It just wasn't their thing. And they stumbled across it in some capacity because I didn't know who they were. It wasn't that I sold it to them at a Comic-Con and I was like, I'm not going to sell you something if I don't think that it's going to work for you. I can read people enough to be like, I don't think that's for you. Why don't we go over here and look at this thing? Because this will probably be more up your alley. And then they'll be like, oh yeah, this is like way cooler. And then I get them that book and they take it off. So, some people just stumble across books. Some people, like what they do is like the product reviews. Some people just do reviews. Like that's what they love to do. And so they will just buy books off the shelf and wherever they can get them and just review them. And they have no context of what it is. And sometimes that's really great because then you feel like you're getting like a real review versus like, hey, I met Tom at the show and I bought his book and it's really cool. Like you kind of feel like maybe there's like I met Tom, so I'm going to give him a good review versus just, hey, I found this piece of crap on the rack and I read it and it turned out to be good. Like that's kind of what I ultimately want is like, this looks like shit, but it turned out to be good.
Yeah, I know you've been doing this for a long time, 10 years, right? Almost 11 years.
Now. We're in 11, year 11.
Wow.
So do you remember, if you can think back that far, when you got your first review? Do you remember?
Vaguely, because they happened quickly. The internet was not as developed as it is right now. We're talking 2009, 10 is when we started doing this. So the internet obviously existed, but Facebook was fairly new. I don't even know if Twitter existed. So it was still very basic internet. It wasn't social media heavy internet yet.
Yeah, MySpace was dying.
Yeah, so it was because we got reviewed on a lot of places, just like people's podcast, well, not podcasts, but like blogs and stuff back in the day, you know.
Yeah.
So a lot of that came from people at cons. They're like, "Hey, tell us about your stuff. What's going on? We don't know who you are." I'm like, "I know you don't know who I am because I've never been here before. So clearly, there's no reason for you to know who I am." And then they would buy books, take them home, and they'd review them, and they'd send us the links to their blogs, and we'd be like, "Oh, cool, this is." And so that's kind of how it started. And then as things kind of got bigger and bigger and bigger, and all these different places would, you know, aggregate all these reviews and stuff, then you get like Goodreads and things like that where you get reviews all the time. So yeah, it was fairly early. Most of them were good. Like I said, that Critter one was pretty early, where the guy was upset about my time zones. So it was always generally good. Like I would say we would lean 75% into this is really good. Then we'd get another, 10, 15% that's like, well, it's okay. But maybe not for me. And then you'd get like that other 10% that's like, don't waste your time. Literally, that's what they'll say. Don't waste your time. It's like, hey, thanks.
Yeah, and if anybody hasn't read a Big Dog Inc. book, you should totally read it. Tom is a great writer. He's very descriptive in his books. He tells a great story and beautiful artwork. He works with many great artists. So do you want to kind of give us the lowdown on Big Dog Inc. for the people that might not know?
Yeah, sure. So basically, like we said, 2009, 2010, well, 2009 is when Big Dog Inc. officially started, but we published our first book in 2010. So that's kind of what we consider our anniversary. So that's why that's our year one is 2010. Put out a book called Penny for Your Soul, which is basically this kind of Vertigo style book about the end of days happening in Las Vegas. A hotel owner who happens to be the granddaughter of the devil is buying souls, and heaven and hell take notice of these missing souls and come looking for them. And that's kind of the basics of the whole thing. It sold out immediately, which really surprised us. We went to a second printing. A few months later, we put out Critter, which is what you see back here. Both of those books have been running now for basically perpetually for that time. Obviously, we start and stop. It's mini series and so on. So it's not like every single month for every single year we do an issue. But we've got almost 30 issues of Penny for Your Soul. We've got 25 issues of Critter. From there, basically every year was a different book. Legend of Oz: The Wicked West was our year. Oh my God, 2011. So would have been year 2. So we did 2 books in year 1. Year 2 was Legend of Oz: The Wicked West. Then we did Ursa Minor the following year. That was our horror title. Following year after that was Scheherazade. On and on and on and on. So we really kind of, I should say because I'm writing this stuff. I'm open to genre. So it's like I started with superheroes. Critter was the first thing I wrote, but because it was moving slower, I decided to write something else. That's where Penny for Your Soul came from, and it just happened to come out first because the artist was faster. That's literally all that happened there. Superheroes, westerns, theology, what do they call the historical fiction? We've done kaiju, we've done slice of life. Literally almost everything that you can imagine we've probably touched on in some capacity. Even talking about steampunk, Legend of Oz is definitely lands into the steampunk realm to some degree. A lot of steampunk folks like our Legend of Oz. Oh, she's in the store. And so yeah, so I just kind of kept going, and we did everything on our own for the first 4 years, and then we moved over and we were published by Aspen Comics for 3 years. That was an interesting experience. That really taught me a lot. Aspen was a great place to be. Most of what we did with Aspen was just reprints of the original material because we wanted to introduce the Aspen fans to our books.
Right, and Aspen, of course, was where the great Michael Turner was.
Michael Turner, that's correct. Yep. And so we reprinted a bunch of stuff. We did do a little bit of new material there. And then at the end of 3 years, they ended up selling half part of the company to a Hollywood studio. And so there was just no room for us to be there anymore. And so we had to figure out, okay, well, what do? We go back into Diamond? Like what's happening here? And that's when we started to do Kickstarters in a very heavy context, and that was 2017, I think. and we've been doing Kickstarters as our primary distribution method really ever since. And we've done over 20 campaigns. We only had one that wasn't successful, and that was all because it was my fault. But everything else has been successful and growing since then. I hit that bump, and I was like, oh crap. Like there was that humbling moment of, it's not all cheese and crackers, man. You got to keep going. And make this work. And so we came back, we made it work, and got it going. And here we are. We just did a week-long campaign for World Goth Day, which was May 22nd, is actually World Goth Day, but we did a week-long Kickstarter campaign for it. We did 16,000 in a week. So I'm like, yeah, okay. We kind of got the hang of this now. And we've got a ton of tremendous fans that follow us that are buying into. I mean, not everybody buys everything. Again, like if you buy Penny for Your Soul, you're not necessarily buying Critter. They're completely opposite styles of things.
Yeah, I mean,
but there is enough overlap that it works.
It's kind of like that in the Marvel and DC.
Sure.
Just because you like Batman, you might not like Superman, or with Marvel, you buy Spider-Man, but X-Men's not your thing.
Yeah, correct.
So,
yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I do so much different stuff, is because from a convention standpoint, when I'm there at the tables, it's like there is no chance you can come to my table and I don't have something that's going to, grab you. There's zero chance. Zero. Absolutely zero. You can fake it. You can look at me like, I don't really like anything. You can fake it, but I know you're looking at something because I'm looking at your eyes on the banners. I know what you're doing.
I'd probably be, if depending on what I'm wearing. Like if I'm wearing something steampunk, I would definitely go be attracted to the steampunk stuff. Yep. But then, of course, I'd be like, oh, you have superhero stuff. Oh, you got angels. I'd spend a good chunk of change at your table for sure.
Yeah. And we'd walk you through it all. I mean, basically, a lot of people. I mean, some people just kind of zero in on something. They see a banner, they see a book or something, and they're just like, whomp, tell me what this is. I want to know everything about this thing. Other people just kind of wander in and they're like, holy God, I mean, where do I start? And I'm like, well, we start right with what's in front of you. This is this. We go over here. I'm like, so what do you like? Are you like Buffy? Do you like, Supernatural? Do you like, Deadwood? Like, tell me what you like in the general, pop culture sense. And like I said, most of the time I can be like, okay, if you like that, we're going to take you right here because this is going to run parallel to some of the things that you like. Even though it's not exactly that, it is parallel to what you like, and it should work for you.
Yeah. And for those that have not seen you at a con, you're a rock star. Can you kind of explain the atmosphere of your booth? I mean, you have fantastic writers. I can tell you how this works. This is easy. I am a rock. It's exactly like a rock star thing. It's 100% like a rock star thing. But what it is I don't do anything. I kind of stand around the booth and I walk around because if people come, I need to like, okay, what's going on? But I generally have people at the booth, right? So they're like my handlers, right? And I let them kind of be like, hey, what's going on? Hey, let's talk about the things. And I kind of listen to them and I'm like, okay, are they struggling with these people? Do they got them? Like, where should I point them in a different direction? But most of the time they got it. And for the most part, I'm sort of like the hook, right? I'm like, this is how you sell it. And Tom is right here and he'll sign your books for you. Oh, awesome. And the rock star is here. So it is, in a way, it's like that because you use those sales techniques to be like, here's Tom, come meet the creator of all of this stuff. And people love to meet the creators, so that's the awesome part is meeting creators. I remember meeting somebody at con who basically was like, she challenged me on Oz because she knew Oz, the books. And so she saw my Oz and she was like, what are you doing, man? And I'm like, no, trust me. If you know Oz, you're going to like this. And she was like, well, what about and this, that? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, okay, give me the book. Because she challenged me and I won. And then she came back and she wanted the rest of the book. She said, okay, give me the rest of it. I want all of it now. So it's fun. It's super, super fun to talk to people that are like open to like, what is this? I don't know what any of this is. I want to know what it is.
Then there's the people that are like, well, I love Godzilla, and tell me about your giant monster book. I love westerns. Tell me about Oz, whatever. And away we go. It's super, super fun.
Yeah. And you, like I said, you work with a lot of great artists. Who are some of the artists that you like? Every time you see their art, you're just blown away.
Well, I'll tell you, CB Zane is the guy who I've worked with most recently. He did the Goth Day book. And when I wrote Goth Day, I really tried to push myself from a writing standpoint, both from like the story and everything, but also I wanted to create through the words like this visualization for him to understand what I wanted to do, to then translate that into the art. And when I got it to him, I was like, here's the script. I kind of want to do something different. I don't want this to just look like everything we've done before. I want to take this into this sort of noir superhero world. And I want to do this story is going to have these musical cues to it. And I want to be able to build in musical notes into the panels as we're going through the story, because it's basically, as the story starts, Catnip is basically chasing this sound, and the sound is the musical notes. So the musical notes are like moving through the panels as she's moving and kind of chasing the sound. And as soon as he turned these things in, I was dumbfounded. I was like, oh my God, dude, we have got it. This is 100% like level up CB Zane. This is awesome. And I'm dying for people to finally get and see this book. And then we had Wes Hartman come in and color it. And I was like, same thing. I was like, look, dude, you colored this. So this is where Catnip came from the first time, was spin-off comics that we did with CB Zane, Wendy Shaner.
Oh, wow.
That was our big thing that we did together. And so Wes Hartman did the colors for it. So there's
okay, yeah.
There's Catnip there, sort of our goth superhero. And he did great colors, but I was like, look, again, I want to take this to a different place. And I kind of explained to him how I wanted these. I didn't want like black and white. I didn't want gray tone book, but I wanted the base to be gray, and then I wanted the key colors to pop: the blue on her costume, the red in her hair, so on and so on. And so he did a test page. I came back and I was like, oh my! Again, I was just like, holy God, this looks incredible. So I really think that we did something really special with this book, and I really hope people dig it, because CB and Wes, and even HDE doing the letters, we had special lettering that we're doing for this too. So in fact, this guy with the electricity, no spoilers. That's just part of it. So that book's going to be fantastic. I think it's going to look fantastic. But we've been working with a lot of cover artists. So like Carl Liversidge is a guy I found that I've been just feeding artwork to. Pedro Perez is a guy I've been feeding artwork to. Keith Garvey, oh my God, he just turned in 3 covers that are just mind-blowingly cool. It's something that I decided to do kind of late. It's going to be part of our Albuquerque Comic-Con. So in June, well, we're in June now. So Marvel is having this Marvel X-Men Hellfire Club Gala thing. I don't know how many people know about this. But basically it's like the Met Gala, right? Except it's the X-Men. So they're putting out all these.
Awesome.
Yeah, so they're putting out all these crazy covers for like just bizarre X-Men, things. And people are freaking out because they're like, well, this isn't the X-Men. I'm like, you're stupid. You're not paying attention.
Oh my
this
God.
is for an event, man.
Yeah. I have been saying for years that I would love to see a Hellfire Club show.
Exactly, 100%.
Like,
and that's what this is, right? And so I'm like, okay, y'all are just not paying attention. And so I decided, since we were going to be at Albuquerque Comic-Con, I was like, you know what? The BDI ladies are going to crash the Hellfire Club Gala. This is what's going to happen. And so so we had Nia Ruffino design up some cool, like super fancy, dress up stuff for Catnip and Danica and Annabeth from Ursa Minor. And Keith Garvey came in and did the art. So they're basically all in their like super gear, like standing in this huge white marble hall. And it's just like, and he just turned it in today. So I'm still like geeking out over it. It's like, this is ridiculous. And so everybody that gets them, you're going to get a little like kind of like a COA. That's sort of like your invitation to the gala. But it's the BDI girls crashing Marvel's party. So we like to have fun.
I'm so excited to see this. Oh man, I there needs to be like a live stream when you guys enter.
This is gonna be fun.
Oh man, I would totally dress up with you guys if I could. That's something I would totally buy tickets for.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. I mean, the Marvel, it's crazy because the Marvel thing, people just missed the entire point. I mean, they just completely missed the point. And what am I looking for? I'm trying to find, where is it? Oh, right. Duh. I'm going to send you the image. You can put it up.
Okay.
If I can find it. And people are just missing the point because they're seeing these, and I get it because the costumes that they're doing are so bizarre, right? They're just so weird. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not superhero costumes, guys. This is something being done for a point. I just sent it to you on Facebook. If you want to grab it, you can post it up. And it's so weird because it's like, all these years, I know all these guys are like, yeah, man, I remember when comics used to be fun. And I'm just like, this is it. Like they just made comics fun. Like this is a crazy, bizarre, massive design thing that Marvel's doing. And y'all are complaining about it because you think that they're going to go fight each other in dresses. Like you're not paying attention. So, so for me, I was like immediately like, I have got to get my hands in this clay. And that's what we did. And so in June, Albuquerque Comic-Con, the weekend of the 25th. So basically like 11 days, we will debut these covers at Albuquerque Comic-Con.
And I would totally wear the red dress, by the way.
There they are.
Okay, so we totally need these. Are these going to be strictly at the con, or they'll be available somehow?
They are convention exclusives. However, those that know us know full well that whenever we do a con, at least once or twice a day, we will go live from the con and sell stuff from the con, which will include these covers. It is going to be a set of 100. That's it, 100 of each. So you can buy them individually, but there's a set price too. And so starting on Friday, the 25th, at some point on Friday, we will go live. These will be available to the general public once the convention goers have a run at them first, because obviously they're made for them. But yeah, they will become available probably Friday evening and then Saturday morning and so on until they're gone.
Do we have a price available yet, or is this still be worked on?
Yeah, so they're going to be, because there's only 100 of each cover. So if you guys are imagining these covers, it's going to be split into 3 pieces, right? So you can buy whichever one you want, and they're basically just going to be $40 a piece, whichever one you want. If you want to buy the whole set will just be $100. So you'll save yourself a little money.
That's
stunning.
I wonder if someone's going to cosplay as these characters down the road.
Well, and that's the other thing. That's the thing that people are missing about this. Number one, when they did this Marvel Gala thing, this got announced in the general populace. This was on like Entertainment Tonight. I'm just like, Marvel did a thing that made comics relevant to the point that they were put into the general public. You missed that. You all missed that, guys. That's number one. That means people are like, what the hell's comics, man? And hopefully that brings more people into comics. Number two is the cosplay thing, right? Because they know people love to cosplay all their characters. So guess what? Now here's 100 new designs for people to go running around conventions dressed as their characters. This is marketing genius. But so many people are just like, why are they fighting in, evening gowns? They're not, dude. This is a different kind of thing, and it just went right over so many people's heads. But I was immediately like, because I do not buy or read Marvel or DC. I'm so far removed from it all, but I pay attention to the industry. Like I know what everybody's doing, and when I saw this, I was like, yeah, we're gonna tap that. We're going to tap that, and we're going to have some fun with it. So, yeah.
Well, I think Marvel, now that Disney put Kevin Feige not just in charge of the films, but he's also in charge of Marvel Comics, I think we may see a few things there.
We'll see if that matters. I mean, we'll see if ultimately Marvel has to change everything that they do. If they want to connect to the movie audience, and I'm assuming that's why they're letting Feige talk about this stuff too, or deal with this stuff. They have to basically change everything that they do, because nothing in the movies translates to the comics. Nothing.
Yeah.
Right. And so if someone reads the Avengers and they come into the comic book store and they're like, give me the Avengers book, there is no Avengers book on the market that matches what they just watched in the movie theater. Like none.
Exactly.
I mean, obviously you can give them like an Infinity War, Infinity Gauntlet book, things like that. You know, you can do some of that stuff. But as far as like a regular, like, hey, we want to build a monthly fan base for the Avengers, it has to follow what they're seeing on TV and the Winter Soldier, and it all has to work together. Otherwise, you're going to get people, but what happens is that, and trust me, I've worked in comic book stores for decades, including when all of this Marvel stuff went crazy. You get new people to come in and they're like, oh, cool, comics, man, and they buy comics, and 6 months later, you never see them again because the format doesn't work for them. It doesn't match up to what they're seeing on the cartoons and the TV shows and the movies, and they're just like, well, this isn't relevant to me. And so you get a lot of in and out, newbies, but it's really hard to latch onto them for a long term. Yeah.
Well, I kind of got a big question here for you. We're in June, which is Pride Month. What is your feeling on comics and then representing everybody?
I mean, there's no reason not to. It's funny because we have a, and I didn't actually put it up. I forgot about it. We have a Big Dog Inc. The logo, the dog logo, and we have a version of it that has like the rainbow in it that we made many, many years ago. And every time we'd get to June, we'd post it up. Just, I mean, no big deal. We'd just be like, pop, we're going to put that up for y'all now. Cause we're all happy and fine with all that stuff. But it's funny because every time I post it up, I will get the occasional, well, I'm out of here. And I'm like, well, okay. See ya. So, that happens. But as far as the rest of it, it's like, there's no reason not to have it. I struggle with the part of diversity that I struggle with is what is, and people are about to roll their eyes. The forced diversity. Everybody roll your eyes, get it out of your system. Oh, Tom, forced diversity. But the reality is, and it's basically, it goes back to what we just talked about, like with the movies. Like if someone walks into a store and they just watched an Iron Man movie and they go, hey man, where's that Iron Man comic? And they go, here's Iron Man. And Iron Man is Riri. That doesn't translate. They're like, wait a minute. No, Iron Man is Tony Stark. Where is that? Well, this is the current Iron Man. It's Riri Williams. Well, I want Tony Stark. Now, granted, they can be like, well, here's a Tony Stark book. Here, you can go over here. But again, you've lost the ability to monthly. I want a monthly fix of that book. They're going to be like, well, I don't want that. I have to buy old stuff. Old stuff is often expensive, or trade paperbacks. It doesn't translate. So it's very, very difficult to sort of like push that stuff into existing things because it number one, it alienates the people that were buying Tony Stark. They're like, well, I don't want Riri. I'm here for Tony Stark. And then you have the new audience coming in going, hey, I just saw Tony Stark in the theater. Well, we don't have Tony Stark comics anymore. What? So it's a really, really tricky thing. And so for me, it makes far more sense to create something new and just be like, okay, look, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We have this new group of people. You can make teams. You can make single players doing whatever they want. But to be coming in and just be like, well, that guy's gay now and that guy's, whatever. It's just like you're throwing your audience away for the theoretical audience that's going to come running. I have yet to hear of any audience that came running when Iceman was turned gay. Like there was no gay, like, whoosh, hey, we're all going to buy Iceman now. Like it just didn't happen. So it's important that that stuff is there. There's no reason for it not to be there. I mean, the X-Men from their inception have been, human rights, people rights, all rights, basically. And they've always been a diverse team, right down to Storm. What? She had no powers and she still beat Cyclops and she led the X-Men and she beat the Morlocks and she led the two teams at the same time. No one was in an uproar because a black woman, led the X-Men. We all read that book and we were like, God damn, she's awesome. So I don't really understand where we are now, where we can't just make things awesome versus like going through these weird machinations of like, well, we need a gay character. Okay, Iceman's gay now. That just doesn't make sense to me.
They also made Beast gay at one point too, and I'm just like,
I don't know. I don't know.
No,
It's just
no.
it's not the right method, right? It's the right thought process, but it's not the right method.
My thing is that there were enough characters that were nobody really knew. So why couldn't that just be where their inlet? Like, you kind of assumed, but you weren't 100% sure.
Well, here's the thing.
It was ambiguous. Anything that was like that, that should have been their opening. Not just all of a sudden.
Well, here's the thing. And here's the reason, right? And here's the reason. And this makes marketing sense. That's what you talk about marketing. This makes marketing sense. If you come in and you say, here is new XY character and he's gay, people go, oh, okay. But if you come in and you be like, hey, here's Wolverine and he's now gay, you've created a reaction because Wolverine has market value. People understand what it means. It's like the argument that's happening right now where they're like, hey, we should have a black Superman. Well, we have black Superman. There are variations of Superman throughout all of the New 52 worlds or whatever they call them. There is a black Superman. But if you were to come out and just make a movie, Superman, and the dude's black, people aren't, again, there's no connection. People are like, what are you talking about? Superman is not black. So it's a very, very tricky thing to try and do all of this stuff. And that's why, to me, it makes far more sense to just be like, look, let's make something new. Let's put real power behind it. You know, if you're talking about DC, let's put Jim Lee on this book. Let's make this real. Let's have this run more than 6 issues. You know, like, let's legitimately say something's changing. We are creating over here, not changing, not altering, not retconning. We are creating over here, because the creation in comics is the thing that has really stalled heavily in the last few decades. I mean, look at Marvel. They just announced another Extreme Carnage thing. It's like, how many times are we going to do? I don't ever want to hear Venom, Carnage, Gwen, Stacy. I don't want to hear any of these things ever again. You're hung up on them. You're stuck in the mud with these things. It doesn't mean you can't use the characters. Certainly use the characters, but create something. Even when they did Cosmic Ghost Rider, it's like, hey, Cosmic Ghost Rider, that's kind of vaguely interesting. Oh yeah, and he's Frank Castle. Well, now I don't care, because again, you're just Tetrising things together that don't need to be Tetris together. Create something and push forward, versus just like, well, remember when we did that in 1982? Yeah, it was 1982. No one cares. Give me something new. And I think that's where a lot of indie comics are having a sense of resurgence, because nothing that they're doing has 50 years of history. So it's like, I can come in on issue 10 and it's just issue 10. You know, it's not that hard to be like, I liked issue 10. Let me go find, 1 through 9. It's not that difficult. And then there's just people who are just like, hey, here's a new number 1 thing. And it's steampunk mixed with, whatever. And people are like, oh, cool. Let me get that thing. And so, now you have Kickstarter, which is like basically the 3rd biggest publisher essentially on the planet. It did $22 million last year during a pandemic in sales. So, this is, and within all of this new indie stuff where they can be like, hey, I'm making new things. Guess what? My character's gay. Guess what? My character's bi. Guess what? My character's black. And it doesn't matter, because it's just a new creation and there's no baggage attached to it. And people can just come in fresh and be like, I want to read about this black character who's gay. I want to read about this white girl who's poly. Whatever it is, I want it. It's here. Give it to me.
Exactly.
Indie comics allows much more access for that.
Indie comics allows for other stories to be told that possibly wouldn't have been told in the mainstream.
Sure. 100%.
Like I've read all kinds of books. Like, you have a lot of.
You should come join the conversation.
There's like, things you like that are kind of like not mainstream things. Like, I used to read tarot.
Sure.
My favorite book, aside from The Crow, but you know, like it was.
And all the Big Dog Ink stuff.
And of course.
Okay.
But like, you know, like it made sense to me because here was this, and it did bother me that it was an X-rated, like, well, it was NC-17, but it was something I enjoyed because I loved reading about witchcraft and I loved reading.
Right.
I just like powerful women, and it made sense.
And it had that wonderful Jim Ballant art.
And it was beautiful. I mean, it was beautiful art. But the point is, it never bothered me. Like, it was my thing, so I went and read it. And if you don't like it, don't read it. Like, but there's so many people that want the story to be told. Like, I think about all these kids that are growing up not knowing where they belong. They need somebody to, you know, identify with.
People latch on to things in a lot of different ways. Yeah. And so the more breadth of content you can have, the better that is going to be. I had a talk with somebody the other day. He made some post about, how did it go down? I want to get this right. Basically, it was a Batman post, and it was something about a Batman and blah, blah, blah. And he makes people safe and such and such. And so I made a post and I was like, well, yeah, but that's all superheroes. Like everything in that description, that's not Batman. That's all superheroes. And then he came back and said, yeah, but I related to Batman because he lost his parents and I lost my parents. And I was like, well, that's a whole different, like, there was a connection there, 100%.
Yeah.
And so you'll see people connect with Wonder Woman for reasons, with Flash for some reasons, with Batman for reasons, whatever, with Raven, the Teen Titans, Raven and Starfire and all that. They'll connect with it for whatever reason they have personally. And that's great. And so the more story and the more content and the more breadth of story type you can have, the better it is.
And yeah, John mentioned 95% of the comics I read are in the titles. You can tell that just by looking at my weekly picks. He does a great review show as well, and I was hoping that he was going to join us, but anyway, but yeah, like all the stuff that I've read growing up, like I got into the X-Men because of, you know, living in foster care, and they were who I related to at the time. And I mean, I still relate to them, but I'm also falling in love with a lot of the indie stuff because it seems to, like, the progression with comic books, like Marvel and DC hasn't like gone past like when I was a teenager. It's still, right. They're still rehashing the same stories over and over again.
Literally, it's like Secret Wars is about to happen again. Yeah.
And I can't go through another Phoenix Saga.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of that, you know, it's kind of like what we see with Disney. I mean, Disney owns Marvel now, but Disney was doing all of these like Cinderella 2 and so on. And they want to make sure that the IP stays relevant to a modern, you know, generation. And so people that are reading comics now might not have ever read the Dark Phoenix Saga. So if they get a Phoenix Saga, that's new to them. And that's fine. That's great. Except that, remember, you've got lifelong readers who are reading this and they're like, yeah, dude, we've already done this like
3 times.
Come on. You know, if you're going to do another Phoenix Saga, find a way to do a Phoenix Saga that is new to the existing readers, because it's new to the new readers anyway. It doesn't matter. So you might as well come in and be like, okay, guys, how do we do the Phoenix again, but to make it for the readers that have seen it 8 other times? Like, what can we do to like make the Phoenix awesome right now? Because the new readers it's all new to them. Doesn't matter. You have to, and this comes back to like fan service and all this kind of stuff. It's like to some degree, you have to have it, because if it's not there, what are we fans of? You know what I mean? So you have to kind of feed that a little bit, but at the same time, you need to take that little bit of nostalgia, the member berries, right? You guys watch South Park, right? The member berries. You got to have the member berries there, but at the same time, you've got to be organically moving forward. And that's how you can, you know, reach larger scale for what you're doing. You know, when you're dealing with Marvel and DC specifically, you're talking about heavily licensed and leveraged properties. So there's really only so much that they can do because of that. And so now with Kevin Feige coming in and supposedly being able to do whatever he's going to do with comics, I think you could potentially see like a tectonic shift in what these comics are going to be and look like. And that's it's going to be interesting. I mean, I don't know that there's anything that they could do to make me buy Marvel again, to be perfectly honest. I don't know what it would be. The last thing that I read for Marvel was Spirits of Vengeance about, I don't know, 3 years ago. It was like it was Blaze, Johnny Blaze for first, not Danny Ketch or any other nonsense ghostwriter. It was Johnny Blaze. It was Satana. It was Hellstrom. Some other guy. I was like, this is an awesome team. The art is freaking spectacular. So you're going to get my $4 and you get 20 pages. You get your one chance to get me to actually buy this whole thing. And they did. They were like, yeah, dude, here's a cool book. And I was like, oh my God. So bought the whole thing thinking, all right, so we're going to have this sort of revamping of, the Spirits of Vengeance. And like, here we go. And like, here I am 3 years later, like, what happened? Where nothing happened. Everything's the same. So I got my 5 issues and I like it a lot, but I haven't been back since for anything. So I think it would be very difficult. I will pay attention. It's like when DC went through their multiple reboots in like 5 years. I was like, this is not a good idea. But I watched and took notes, and I was working in comic book stores at the time. So it was my job to know what was going on. And obviously I would sell people whatever they wanted. Everybody, it's funny. Everybody in the store knew. I worked out at Jesse James Comics in Arizona. Everybody at the store knew that Tom will help you with whatever you need. He will help you find anything you need. He will tell you what is going on, and he will keep his mouth shut unless you ask him something. And if you ask him something, Tom is going to give you the real lowdown on what Tom thinks about what's happening here. Yeah. So it was a really fun environment. But I'm not a Daredevil fan. I'm not a Harley fan. But people would come in like, "Yo, where's your Deadpool?" And I'd be like, "I got a section of Deadpool right here. Let me help you out." And then they'll be like, "So did you watch that movie?" And I'd be like, "Well, you asked. So here we go." But it was fun. It was fun, but it's never serious. It's just people talking comics. And that was the great part is 90% of the people that talk about comics and movies, they know it's just, hey, we're just talking. We're fans of this and we're not fans we're just talking and having a good time and laughing at each other. And then at the end of the day, he buys his Deadpool comics and he goes home. And I'm like, dude, we'll see you next Wednesday. That's the great part about comics is that's 90% of the audience and the people that are involved in it. I rag on Marvel and DC and stuff all the time. Even when we do our movie show with Jim Noble, I tear movies down, but we all have a good time regardless of what we like or don't like, because we're not taking it personally. There's no personal attacks. If you like Deadpool and I don't care. It doesn't affect me. I will help you find the Deadpool you need. And then you'll be off and see you next week. So as long as we can exist within that circle of just like, you like Deadpool, ew, and people can be like, ha ha ha, who cares? We're just talking comics, we're talking art, talking stories. It's all fake, guys. None of this is real. So let's just have a good time with it.
I mean, the whole point of being with other people that are like-minded is somebody who's saying, oh, well, I didn't, you can have a conversation and not be upset about whatever somebody's doing. Like, I love Captain Marvel. I don't care. I don't care what you say. She speaks to me, and that's important to me. But I also love other things, and that's not going to stop me from reading any of the other stuff I want to read.
Yeah, nor should it.
I will forever love The Crow, and there isn't a damn thing in the world you can do to change my mind about it. And so I think as geeks and nerds and stuff, we're like, hey, cool. Let's just love this stuff together. And if you just happen to meet somebody who has the same understanding of something that you do, or something that you love speaks to them, then you found a safe spot.
Yeah.
And that's all that matters.
And that's what the cons are. The cons.
And that's why we all flock to these places. It's not just because we're spending money, but we're getting our fix. Like, we're watching people, love the same things. And we're meeting people that care about the same things. And that's really what fandom is. And so if we're not doing that, like, I mean, if you can get the hardcore Oz fans to read Oz, then you're doing something right. And so it just gives them a new place where something is born. It's
100%,
beautiful. Like, I mean, I'm not as heavily in the comic books now as I used to be, but I will pick up all kinds of stuff that I just happen to love that I found later on. Like, shoot, I read the entire run of Strangers in Paradise. I pretty much have the entire run of Strangers in Paradise and part of Echo. But it gets expensive. So I look for the trade paperbacks and I find other things that I like that are similar to. But that's what fandom is. You're not supposed to make judgments. Like, forever, this is my thing. If it's not canon, you're just all of a sudden like wrong. So I'm a Supernatural fan. I will always be a Supernatural fan. I am the biggest. I got problems except for season 7 because season 7 was terrible. But I don't hate the fact that it ran for 15 years, and I don't love the series finale because you know what? It could have been better. But let's be honest.
Under the conditions.
There were a lot of things that happened this year that made all of that impossible. We're just fucking lucky we got what we got. And to be completely honest, God damn it, he deserves to go to heaven. So fuck everything else. Like,
spoiler alert.
At this point, like, it's gonna be. It's just the point. Like, I didn't curse when I was on the comics in the classroom panel, but the other stuff, and, you know, like, don't put me on a Supernatural panel because it's probably gonna happen. But it was the same thing as like, oh, they queer baited us with Destiel, and I said no. Well, Destiel was your thing. Like, you shipped them, and it wasn't even a thing. Like, I'm sorry, but an angel doesn't even have a gender. So, like, I don't know where you people are. You're trying to put your worldly things on things that don't even matter. Like, why? Why do they have to be gay? Why can't he just love him because he's a human and he loves his soul? Like, I don't understand why that's a thing. That's my tirade. I'm annoyed by that. No. But just let, you know, you say whatever you want to say. You shipped them, cool. Whatever, Destiel, was good for you. Me, I'm personally like, they do have a bromance. It's weird, but they're friends. But I know guys that are like that with each other. Sure. So hey, whatever.
I know lots of guys who are comfortable with their sexuality, where it's like they will go out all hold no hold bar. They'll actually like make it sound like they're partners. They're like, oh no, we're straight. We're both perfectly straight. And
it's you know, if you're comfortable with that, that's fine. But I'm just like, why you're kind of missing the point. Like, you're missing the way people are free to see things. Like, your perception is your truth, not necessarily everybody else's.
Right.
Like, you could say why somebody did something. It's like the whole run of the Superman Red Sun. What if Superman was born in Russia? Or crash landed in Russia. Mm-hmm. Well, it would be a whole different story. Yep. Like, you know, I don't know.
We all have our fanfics. Like, I have mine.
Makes me mad sometimes because we yuck on other people's yum.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Like,
well, but here's the thing. I think it's kind of like sports, right? It's like, I like the Chargers, you like the Raiders. So we're going to rag on each other, but there's nothing personal there, right? Yeah. So in fandom, you know, it's like, well, I like this and you don't. It's like, again, we can rag on each other. There's no reason for it to ever become personal. We can tease each other. We can make jokes. That's like comedy is just dying because people don't understand that it isn't a personal attack, right? So as long as we're not being like, hey, Brian, you're a loser, like that's an attack. That's not a reasonable response to Brian telling me he likes Deadpool. Like, it's just not reasonable. It's all these people on social media who are chasing off these stars off social media because they didn't like something happened in the TV show. They didn't like the character, like whatever. It's like, yo, this isn't real. If you don't like it, stop watching it. You know, it's like Last Jedi was garbage, right? But I didn't go chase Kelly Marie Tran off of freaking social media because she was in Last Jedi. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, you know, tell me you like Last Jedi. Tell me that you don't. That's fine. We'll have the discussion. But none of these people they're reading lines that they didn't write. They're hired to do a job. They're portraying a character that's not real. Just breathe.
We have the same thing when it comes to hockey. Like right now right now the Canadians are playing for Canada, which is great. But when the Jets were playing and Winnipeg goes crazy when our team makes it.
We got fighting. We got
some fighting words there.
No,
exactly.
No,
exactly.
I didn't hate it. It was
no. Listen, Last Jedi was so bad, I will never watch a Rian Johnson movie again.
No.
That's it. I have not seen Knives Out. I have no intention to. Rian Johnson.
Knives Out was amazing.
Is dead to me. Dead to me.
Okay, now I'm curious. Have you seen Zack Snyder's Justice League?
Oh, sure. We all have. Everybody's seen it.
What do you think of it?
Here's the thing. I'm not Zack Snyder for me is very up and down. I'm not a huge fan, but there's I like 300 was good. I personally think Watchmen is brilliant. I love Watchmen. I hate the comic book. I cannot read it, but I love what he did with it in the thing. I love the Watchmen. His Justice League was light years ahead of what Joss did. That's not debatable. Joss turned in a piece of junk movie. So Zach, I'm really happy for Zach that he got to do this too, because he got removed for weird reasons. It was a giant mess that he had to leave. So the fact that he actually got to do it is a miracle. To me though, it's still just another Zack Snyder. My head is in my hand. I'm still watching Zack Snyder, I guess, Now, it didn't help that it's 4 hours. I mean, that doesn't help anything. You got to be really prepared for a 4-hour movie. So it's better for sure, but it's still just I'll never watch it again. Even if it was 3 hours, I'd probably never watch it again. I don't buy into his vision of Superman especially. But everything that's kind of branched out of the Snyder Superman, Man of Steel, whatever thing is just that's not my world and understanding of those characters, especially Superman. Man of Steel was a travesty.
I feel like you're only as good as the words on the paper. Like there's only so much you can do.
Sure. This isn't an actor thing. This is not an actor thing at all. They did what they needed to do.
But I think he was amazing. And I did watch Man of Steel. And while I still think that Zack Snyder needs to turn the fucking lights on. Because half of fucking Batman v Superman, I couldn't even see what was going on. I'm like, why?
The hues and the color that he uses with the camera.
All black. It's dark. Not like dark, like film noir, like dark. You can't fucking see what's happening.
Yeah. Well, and the Justice League is basically almost sepia tone the whole way through. It's a really weird thing.
I think it works for that's a lot of his style though, because look at 300.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
But it works for the story.
There was a lot of color in like Sucker Punch.
Like if you're going to watch
beautiful,
you're going to expect something, right? You're expecting a historical whatever, and it was beautiful. Like I'm not even going to say like 300 was beautiful.
Yeah, that's the thing. Zack Snyder is very much a visual guy. Like this guy, even if you don't like the movies, the visuals that you're getting are like, wow, that's quite the shot. That's quite the whatever it is that you're seeing. Mm-hmm. That 100%, I totally agree. But I don't know that he has got storytelling down yet.
Yeah, I want to see Snyder and James Gunn pair up again, because I thought the remake of Dawn of the Dead was really good.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's one of the ones that I like for sure.
Yeah, did you see Army of the Dead?
Yeah, I did.
Army of the Dead is a great movie, by the way.
Okay, turn everybody off except for me and her, because I'm going to tear this movie apart.
Okay, go.
I'm going to destroy it. Army of the Dead First of all, let me say this. I don't even get a sense of Zack Snyder through this movie. Once you got past like the opening credits, which is 100% Zack Snyder, the rest of it is like, this is Zack Snyder. I don't understand. This does not look like a Zack Snyder movie to me. Number 2, Dave Bautista is the worst leading man in Hollywood right now. He is the most boring dude. He's perfectly fine as like a background like guy to just kind of hang out in the cast. He's fine, but put him as the lead. Man, this guy has no personality. There's like zero charisma happening here. And he used to go into wrestling rings like, rah, like yelling and screaming. Like, what the hell happened, dude? Now you're just like this.
Well, he didn't really have personality in wrestling either.
No, but he would have emotion. He has no emotion as a leading man, like zero. There was like no emotion in this movie for him at all. He was totally unbelievable.
That's why Drax was the perfect character for him.
Exactly, because it forced him to do something, right? That's 100% right. 100% right. It forced him to become a character. If his role or his director doesn't like really make him like, dude, I need more out of you, he's not going to give you more. It's there. He can do it. Drax is the example, but he's just not doing it. The rest of the movie is basically aliens. Let's go into this place where there's all these things and let's shoot them all while the government is secretly trying to grab them, take them home and weaponize them. Right down to dialogue in the film comes straight out of Aliens, right down to the ending when Tig Notaro flies away and they get to the top and they're like, oh my God, she left us. No, here I am. We're heroes. It's every zombie movie that you've seen smashed into one, and the few things that they did that were actually potentially unique, like they had the alpha zombie idea. I don't know if anybody caught this. There was a pregnant zombie, yo.
Yes,
anybody see
was.
that? A lot of people just completely missed that, and this wasn't an existing girl.
How did you miss that?
They missed it. They had no clue.
He went up to her stomach and put his ear against her
twice,
belly.
When she died, he checked again. Yeah, exactly twice. But they had these things that were like, okay, so we're going in a different direction with our zombie guys. Okay, cool. Except none of that expanded. Like none of it was given reason. Now I know part of that reason is probably because there's supposedly like an animated series that's coming, I guess, and they probably don't want to give away all their secrets, so they want to have stuff for future story. But the problem that I have with that, and this is a problem that's in a lot of movies right now, is you're not just making a good movie. You're going in saying, well, we're going to make 3 of these, so we're not going to tell you anything about any of this until we get to number 3. In the meantime, I've got a movie that I'm like, I don't get it. Like, it's okay to have questions. It's okay to be like, what does that mean? And then move it into the next one. That's 100%. That's good. But you have to make a good, coherent story to begin with in order to get me to see part 2 of whatever it is that you're trying to make me see. Right? Yeah, the opening was cool. It was pure Zack Snyder. It was like, this is crazy, this is wild. There's like zombie impersonators and Elvis impersonators. Like, this is going to be crazy. And then it's just like, then you got zombies jumping around looking like Spider-Man. Like, this is weird, man. This is weird. I didn't like any of the characters except for, what was his name, Hans or something? The safe guy, the safe cracker guy.
Yeah,
like he was cool. He was a legitimate character and a personality. And I liked him and I thought he was really good. But the rest of them, it's kind of like The Walking Dead for me. It's like, I don't care if any of these people die. And in a zombie movie, you have to care. Otherwise, you're rooting for the zombies. And that's sort of not the point of what these movies are supposed to be.
Right. So I see we're joined by Grant. So Grant, this is Tom Hutchinson, who has very pretty much killed the Kickstarter. I mean, the guy conquers Kickstarter every time. So if there's anything Kickstarter that you need help with, talk to this man right here.
So the big question that I have right now.
Oh, are we jumping right from Army of Dead into Kickstarter? We're like, whoa, transition.
Well,
we didn't even give Willow like a chance to respond to my tirade.
I will say this. I love zombie movies. I don't care how bad they are.
That's fair. I mean, that's fair. 100% fair. Listen, I like Godzilla movies no matter how bad they are. That I get. If you love the genre and you're just into it, just go, man. That I totally get. 100% for you. Yes.
But yes, Grant, go right ahead.
Okay, so my big question now is, I was planning on doing a 6-issue miniseries.
Okay.
I don't know if people are going to have the attention span for that. Just
they will if you make a good book. If you make just like we talked about like the first movie, right? If you make a shitty movie, you might not get people to come back to number 2. But in the comic book world, if you make a good number 1, it's a natural thing for people to be like, okay, give me that number 2. But you also need to be able to produce that number 2 in a timely fashion. It can't be like, well, we're going to do number 1 now and number 2 sometime next year and number 3 2025, because then people are like, well, then now I don't care. You have to. Comics are that monthly. I mean, obviously we don't do monthly Kickstarters, but comics are that monthly. Like, oh, there's this cliffhanger. Oh, there's a cliffhanger. Oh, there's a cliffhanger. Give me the next one. So if you can produce a good first issue that's solid, and then people will be like, oh man, when are you doing Kickstarter number 2? They'll be back as long as they like it. I mean, that's really all it comes down to is they have to like it, and you have to turn around the next issue within a reasonable amount of time. I mean, we tend to do things quarterly, Kickstarter wise. That kind of makes things pretty easy as far as like doing the campaign, doing the fulfillment, getting to the next one in a reasonable time. But you also can fulfill kind of when the next one's happening is kind of what we do. So that's the thing is make a good book and put it out in a timely fashion so that they can't forget about you.
Yeah, I mean, that's about what we did. We did about quarterly as well. So I guess what I'm wondering is it better to take your time and do like a bigger book, or is it better to get something out there?
In my experience, and I know other people that do it differently. I know a number of people that do like full on like graphic novel things. In my experience, it is better to do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 issues. Similar to why you do that in comic stores without, as opposed to just putting out one book versus like a miniseries. It's like, let's use the comic book store analogy, right? So in comic book stores, you're like, hey, we're putting out a comic book, we're putting out a comic book, we're putting out a comic book. And then there it is. It's on the rack. It's on the rack. Boom. Hey, we bought your comic book. Cool. Well, that's it. We're done. You know, we put out that one huge book. But if it's comic book, boom, issue 1, comic book 2, comic book 3, and you're like continuing this trend of like, you know, hey, Tom's comic is coming. Tom's number 3, Tom's number 4, Tom's number 5. You create a longer surge of energy for the book versus just the big like, there's your 120 pages in one shot. People like that. There's nothing wrong with it. People like those big books. There's zero wrong with it, but it doesn't allow you to build anything. Like when we did Penny for Your Soul, that was the first thing that we did. Geez, you guys, how come every time I'm on one of these shows, everybody wants to message me on Facebook? All right. Okay, you guys are on mute. So when we did Penny for Your Soul Kickstarter, that was going to be a 7-issue series, right? I was told to my face, you can't do that because the attrition rates will kill you. Because when you get to 1, you get to 2, you get to 3, it's just going to fall right off. And I said, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm just going to do it my way. So, and we did it my way. So the first one that we did $16,000 roughly. And we had, I want to say I did this right, a little under 300 backers, 250, 60, 70, something like that. The next one we did almost the exact same dollar amount. I think we lost a couple of backers, but we were basically, issue 2 was basically the same thing.
Hold on a second. You're saying you had 300 backers and you made $16,000?
We did 250 backers ish, and we made 16,000. Yeah.
Because I had about 300 backers and I made about $4,000.
It all depends on what you're selling, you know, and what we do at Big Dog Inc. is we have a lot of variant covers. And we have buyers that buy the variant covers. Some will buy them, all of them. Some will just buy a couple of them, whatever. But yeah, that's what happened. And then the second one was about the same. And then the third one, we had a jump. We went over 300 for the first time. I think we went from 16. Oh, this is so long ago. We went from 16 to like 19-ish or something like that. But then from issue 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, when we got to issue 7, we were over 400 backers. We had $31,000. It grew every time we did an issue. And that's because we created that like hey, we're doing it. And so the people that were on issue 1 continued, and then people were like, oh, I didn't get this, so I'm in. And then issue 3, oh, I didn't get this, so I'm in. Oh, I didn't get this, so I'm in. And it just grew organically, all on its own. Really, we didn't do anything different. We just put the books out and said, hey, we're back. And we ended up over 400 backers with 31,000 on the last campaign, which was a few years ago for Penny for Your Soul. And then, but that doesn't necessarily translate. Then if you do another book, you're going to start at that number, because the new book now has to build itself all over again, because you're starting at ground zero, essentially. I mean, there'll be some overlap, because if people like what you did before, they'll be like, oh, Grant's got a new thing, let's find out what this is. If it floats their boat, they'll jump in. If it's not their thing, like if it's a completely different genre, then you might not get them. I mean, we see that all the time. You know, Critter does not do the same numbers as Penny for Your Soul, because we don't do the super sexy, like Las Vegas inspired style covers. So there's a lot of people that just buy it for that art, whereas most of the Critter buyers are buying it primarily because of the story. So there's different levels of, backers that, and what they want from a particular project. So.
And is there such thing as putting out another Kickstarter too soon after your first one?
It can be. Yeah, it can be, because
that's what I'm worried about, because apparently some people didn't get their comic book until like a couple days before I started my second.
Sure. Well, that's not really a problem. I mean, especially if you're talking about a long period of time. It's one thing if you're like, hey, we did a Kickstarter in January, we're doing another one in March. Like, that's probably too much. You're not going to be even close to handling the first one yet. So you're just piling on for yourself. But like I said, we do it quarterly. And so generally speaking, we're fulfilling right as the next one is launching. That's generally it. We've been behind. We've been late. I mean, various reasons. I've been part of those reasons. So, but like this year, we're on time. So we've really worked to get the infrastructure built to kind of get the speed up, especially on the back end, because the back end is brutal. When you're talking about now, for us, we average about 500 backers now, which means we're sending out 500 packages. When we do fulfillment, that's a lot. We've had a couple campaigns go over 600. So you have to have that back end infrastructure in place to be able to be like, oh, dude, okay, we got to turn and burn this stuff and get it into their hands, at least as the next one is starting, because then it's like, oh, hey, there's a new Grant book. Oh my God, my Grant book just showed up in my mailbox. This is cool. Let me go back Grant's new thing. So you can do that little bit of overlap. That's fine. We've done that many, many times. But you can't be so far behind that it's like, well, I don't have my thing. I'm not going to see it for 2 months. Why am I getting Grant's next book? That's where it gets tricky.
Okay. I mean, I don't know. Is this too insider baseball? I don't know. Is this starting to get boring for anybody? Or is it all right if I keep asking?
No, by all means.
No, that's fine, because
go for it.
Insider baseball. That's good.
Hey, I'm all for having like an open forum for artists. And,
as long as every now and then we slip in that Last Jedi sucks, right. It's fine.
So Beowulf #1 ran from mid-February to mid-March.
Okay, yeah.
And I started issue 2. I started the issue 2 Kickstarter June 1st, and it's going to end July 1st. Was that?
That sounds, yeah. I mean, that sounds basically quarterly. That sounds like a reasonable time frame, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, here's the thing. There is absolutely nothing you can do other than just doing it, right? There's no guarantees. Doesn't matter how successful you are on your first one. Does not mean you are going to be as successful on the second one, the third one, whatever. There's no guarantees. We're all just throwing it up on the site and being like, okay, God, please let enough people find this thing. Now, for me, I've been doing this for 11 years. So I have a built-in audience, and I also now have a built-in Kickstarter audience, because I've been doing this Kickstarters now for like 4 years, regularly. So even there's people that buy on Kickstarter that I don't know who the hell they are, because they're not at cons, they're not on Facebook, they're nowhere on my social media. They only exist in the Kickstarter realm, which is really weird to me, but that's just part of what it is. There are segments of the comic book world, and you have to kind of try and get your toes into as many of those as you can.
Okay, so I wanted to get back to something. You said you had 300 customers, and you made $15,000.
I mean, roughly on both, yeah.
How is that? I mean, what were you charging for these comic books?
I mean, it varied. They were anywhere from $20 to $40, depending on, yeah. And you can actually, here's the thing that you guys can do. Secret tip. You can go to Kickstarter, right? And if there's somebody that you see is successful about what they're doing and you want to kind of figure it out, kind of see what they're doing, you can actually click on their profile, I guess. And then it'll say at the bottom, like, 15 created and 72 backed or whatever. If you click on the ones that are created, you can actually go back through all of the previous campaigns. They're all ended. You can't back them anymore, but you can go all the way back and be like, okay, here's Tom's first one. Okay, this is what he did. Here's Tom's second one. This is what he did. Here's Tom's third one. This is what he did. And you can watch the growth through all of these things. It's like if you go and watch, Brian Pulido. Brian Pulido wasn't doing 300,000 on his first campaign. He grew that over time. As he figured out the campaigns, as he figured out how to do variants, as he figured out how to market and get more backers. He gets like almost 3,000 backers now. So, and they all basically are spending at least $100 a piece. So just do the math, and it's crazy.
I guess I'm charging $7 for a comic book.
Yeah,
is that way too little?
Well, my lowest is $10, but that includes their shipping as well. And I always have a very, very easy access because some people don't want variants. Some people don't want to spend a lot of money. We generally will get anywhere between 30 to 50 people that will just buy the basic book. And then everybody else is just buying whatever variants that they want. So $7 plus shipping, I'm assuming, right?
Right. And then I charge $5 for.
Yeah. So like $12. You're in the right. You're in the right zone. You're in the right zone. Yeah. You're in the right zone. It's just a matter at that point. It's value, right? It's people got to understand the value. Like if they're looking at the book, is it worth to them spending $12? That's it. And there's absolutely nothing. There's no way to know because every backer that comes in is going to be different. Some guy's going to be like, dude, I want the most limited thing that you've got. I don't care what price it is. I got $1,000 to throw at you. What do you got? Other people are going to be like, well, I'd really like just to support this guy. The book looks cool. I'm going to get that $7 version. So there's no accounting for it. And that's what we talked about with all of my different campaigns: Critter, Penny for Your Soul, Legend of Oz, Kaiju Epic, Princess vs. Zombies. All of them land at different levels because people want different things out of it. And it triggers them in different ways. Princess vs. Zombies was our best campaign ever, not by dollars, but by money. Or sorry, not by dollars, but by backers. We went over 600 backers for the first time ever. It was the first issue, but it sold because it was because people they recognized what was happening. Number one, it's zombies. People know what zombies is, right, Willow?
Oh yeah.
So number one, it's zombies. Number two, it's princesses, and our princesses are basically, they're not Disney princesses, but they're based on it. It's Snow White, it's Cinderella, it's whatever. So even though they're in these weird sort of sexy Halloween costumes, because that's what it is. It's a Halloween story, and that's why they're in these crazy princess costumes. They're still recognizable as, hey, that's Cinderella, that's Princess, that's Snow White, that's whatever. So immediately we grabbed a completely new audience that likes the Disney princess characters. I had no idea that was going to happen, but that's 100% what happened. So everything is just based on who sees it and what triggers them to actually say, yes, you're going to get my click on whatever product it is that you're selling.
It's all in how you market.
It's market, but it's also luck because, like I said, the Kickstarter crowd, they have no idea who I am. I mean, I just came on to Kickstarter. They didn't know what Big Dog Inc. was. They didn't know what Penny for Your Soul was. They just live on Kickstarter because they are Kickstarter supporters. Like that's what they do in comics. They're like, I'm going to support these guys in comics or movies or music or whatever. Kickstarter does lots of stuff. I'm going to support these guys because I want creator-owned things to grow and thrive, and that's where they focus their time and energy, which is awesome. I mean, I have no problem with it. I love that I have regular Kickstarter backers that I've never met before. Hopefully, they'll come to a con and bring their books for me to sign at some point. But because a lot of them, they even ask me like, "Do you sign books?" Because I don't really go to cons, and I'm like, dude, all my fulfillment is done 2,000 miles away, so I can't really sign books, unfortunately. But it's all just literally, here's my idea, throw it on the wall and hope that it sticks enough that, you know, people will dig on it. And then you do it again. You know, hopefully they'll dig on it again. In fact, hopefully maybe more people will dig on it because, again, growth. You want that steady growth from campaign to campaign if you can get it, which, you know, it's not always easy.
Yeah. And don't let if you feel like you haven't succeeded in your first campaign, don't let that discourage you, because you never know. You could have hit it big in the second one.
No, 100%. That's not, no, the thing now is the first one I ended up making about $3,500. And the second one we're about half done and I'm at $2,000. But I don't know. I feel like by now I had already gotten way more than $2,000. So I'm hoping that issue 2 isn't unsuccessful, or I was hoping to make at least as much money off of the second one as I did the first one. But
well, if you're halfway through, I mean, and you're halfway to where you were, you're probably fine. I mean, typically Kickstarters will see a surge in the final week. And you'll get it going. And I mean, we get that all the time. We had the last one we just did was Legend of Oz, and we were way behind. I mean, honestly, we were way behind pace for the previous one. And I was like, wow, what happened? And then all of a sudden, in the last 4 days, it was just like, you know, and it went nuts. And we basically matched our dollar figure. We were off by like $700 at the end. So I was like, oh, okay, you know, and we didn't do anything. We didn't add anything to it. It was just people. You know, people like to wait, which drives me crazy, but it is what it is. You know, thing with Kickstarter, for those that are watching, hello at home. When you back a Kickstarter, you are not charged until the Kickstarter is over. And a lot of people don't understand that. They think that they're clicking it and their card is getting billed like as soon as they click it, but you're not buying anything at that point. You only get charged when the campaign is over. So there's really not a reason to wait, you know, unless you assume that there's going to be something added on later that you might want instead. But even in that situation, you can always change what you're pledging for until the campaign is over. So there's really no reason to wait. Dive in, help, support, because the sooner you do it, the more the project gets up and moving in the algorithm, we all hate that word, but it's real. Algorithms of Kickstarter, the more it happens at the beginning, the higher that campaign will be pushed up into the popularity zone. And, you know, if you're in that top 12 for any extended period of time, you have infinitely more visibility than anybody below that top 12. So every time you go in and you back something, you're pushing, it's basically a like. A pledge is like a like, and it pushes it up in the algorithm. So don't wait, just dive in, grab something. And if you want to change later, just change later. That doesn't affect anything.
Exactly. Thank you very much for sharing your tips on the whole Kickstarter thing, because I've been curious about it. Like the last time I use a GoFundMe to try to fund the calendar that I oversaw a couple of years ago, and it didn't go very well because I mean I was trusting, you know, my friends to help fund my creativity,
right?
And sometimes, you know.
So yeah, I mean, so that
you've got to have a wider.
Yeah,
it's the funnel thing, right? And I don't really know all the details, but basically the funnel is this idea. The bigger your funnel at the top, the more people get in the funnel. The funnel always funnels down. So if you have 100,000 people at the top, you're not getting 100,000 at the bottom.
Yeah.
That's not how a funnel works, guys. But the bigger the top of your funnel is, the bigger the bottom of it is too. And so you really have to just keep marketing yourself to open the top of that funnel more and more and more so that you get more at the end.
Yeah.
That's the worst funnel explanation ever, but that's basically how it works.
I mean, I think one of the problems with my first Kickstarter was, like, I was looking through who backed it, and a lot of the people were people that I knew from like college, like people that I had met once or twice. And I guess what the concern with that is, I feel like the appeal of the comic book for them is, oh, I know the guy who did this comic book.
Sure.
And the problem with that is that what do you want to call it? The novelty of that wears off after like the first issue.
Yeah, it can. And that's where you have to have that Somebody just sent me a message on Patreon and I had to write that down. That's where you have to have the funnel. It can't just be friends and family, because that's going to shut off really fast. It has to, the comic has to be able to grow on its own, literally on its own, without even because even on Kickstarter, that's basically marketing. You're basically marketing to, I don't even know if there's ever been a user number that's been put on Kickstarter, but it has to be in the millions. So basically you get to market yourself to millions of people, and they either like it or they don't. And it rarely has anything to do with you in that capacity, because I don't know who you are. It's just a matter of, what is the product? Is it cool enough for me to click yes? And that's all it comes down to. And this is one of the sad things about comics, guys. Get ready. I'm going to give you a heartbreaking statement. Okay. Not every comic book deserves to be made. Ouch. Right? That's painful, but it's also real. It's why you see a lot of things in Marvel and DC. They only go so long and then they cancel it. And you're like, oh, such a great book. It's like, it's literally not selling. So we have to take it off. We have to retool it. We have to do something to it to make it better, or just say it didn't work. Let's move on. There's so much stuff in comics. I mean, in content in general. I mean, you see it on Netflix. They do one season, it's gone. There's sometimes there's so much content that it's like there's, unless your content is standing out in some way from everybody else's, like WILLOW'S, like, okay, there's a million zombie things, but what's the one really cool zombie thing, right? Walking Dead, or, Army of Darkness, or not Army of Darkness, Army of the Dead, whatever, Night of the Living Dead. Like, what's the cool thing that kind of lifts itself out of the muck, right? And so that's where a lot of comic stuff is. There's 230 comic book campaigns running right now on Kickstarter, and what of that is going to jump out above all of the other 229 to catch a new audience? And that's the hard part. There's no real answer for that other than make a cool book. I mean, and then it literally at that point, it's just in the fans' hands, it's in the buyer's hands, the consumer's hands. It is capitalism. It is, we want Critter, we don't want whatever that is over there. And you have no way to change their minds, because you're online. When you're at a Comic-Con, you can be like, no, don't go over there. Buy my book. You can play that game. But when you're online, the product has to speak for itself. Yeah.
Speaking of Comic-Con, like you do a lot of sales at Comic-Con. Do you?
I hope.
Do you? Have you ever had a Kickstarter going as you're at Comic-Con?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's irrelevant. Totally irrelevant. It meant, at least as far as I could tell, sometimes those analytics aren't very clear. As far as I could tell, it meant nothing. I think the key is, if you're going to do that, make sure that you have something that they can take home with them, like a little flyer or something, like, hey, our Kickstarter is running. When you go home, check it out. Yeah. I mean, we've done it where we've had like a computer on so they can see it and be a part of it. But Comic-Cons are instant gratification. They don't want to be like, well, I'm ordering something. No. They just want, look, there's a comic on your table. That's what I want. And they want to take it home. So just flip in a little flyer that says, like, we got a Kickstarter that's live, check it out. That way, when they're home and the instant gratification element is removed, they can be like, yeah, okay. I can check out this schmuck's Kickstarter now.
Got any other questions, Grant?
Or anybody. If you're in the, I don't know how many people are watching, but if you're in the chat and you have questions, throw them out too. Brian and Nicole, same thing. I mean, this is I'm dominating the conversation here. I don't intend to, but
it's okay.
Everybody feel free to chime in.
I appreciate the hat. Let's see. Okay. I'm very much costuming on a budget type of person. Dollar store hat, and just like little trinkets that I've collected through like collecting steampunk stuff and going through my sewing desk and finding a bunch of stuff and hair clips.
Hair clips, so steampunk.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, this hat maybe cost me $5.
So you want to kind of explain your book to Tom?
So the comic book is Beowulf. You can see the poster in the background. The idea is that this little girl, Hazel, she finds out that her cat is the reincarnation of an 8th century wizard. They find out that a dragon woke up from an 1,000-year nap. So they go to find Beowulf, who unfortunately has been reincarnated as a 30-something slacker. So the comic book is about getting him ready to go battle this dragon.
Okay. Everything that you just said is a very niche audience. Very niche audience. I get a lot of people that are like, "Oh, dude, you should do like a fantasy story," and I'm like, "Oh, dude, man, no. You know how much fantasy stuff there is on the market? Like, there's no way that I could make a fantasy book that is going to be, Lord of the Rings enough for people to care." So I don't really know. I have no ability to tell you like how to market that, etc. You've got is that the cover of the book as well?
That was the cover of issue 1.
So cool. So you've got a cool logo. You've got a very defined style. You've got when you look at it, you understand what you're seeing, which is very, very good. From there, it's just a matter of, and again, I haven't seen your campaign. From there, it's just selling the campaign or selling the book on the campaign. What is it about? Who's doing it? Blah, 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 blah. One of the problems that and we talked about this earlier, is that nobody reads anything anymore. So when you're doing all of these campaign things, oftentimes it helps, instead of just like typing things out and having words on the screen, oftentimes if you incorporate the words into like an image, they will read that before they read just text on the screen. So that's one of the things that we've done now and then for some of our campaigns, is we've inputted the text and our descriptions and so on into images, kind of like memes, but they're not. They're just like, here's a picture plus some words. People tend to read those more than they'll read text. So that's something that you could do to upgrade your campaign. I mean, that's for anybody. I mean, anybody can do that. And then it's basically just, are people going to draw to it? Are people going to look at it and be like, what is it? I want to know what it is. And then will they click on it? And that's all hit and miss. It's all hit and miss. There's no formula for making them like it more when you're online. Again, when you're in a con, your personality comes off. A lot of people like to meet the creators. That's why people go to cons, right? Hey, I met this guy who made this comic. It's really cool. And then the word of mouth starts to flow. That friend tells a friend who tells a friend who tells a friend who tells a friend. 6 degrees of whoever bought a book at your Comic-Con is what you hope for. If some of those people happen to be like comic reviewers or any of that, so much the better. But at that point, you're selling yourself at the same time you're selling your comic. So people might be questionable about your comic, but they may like, well, Tom's a cool guy though, so let me try his thing out. Or if it's like, Tom's just a jackass, I'm not buying his book. I mean, that could happen too. So again, it's just connection with people. However you can find the best ways to connect with whatever audience you're presenting it to, just keep aiming in that direction. Right. Do more and more and more. And and at the end of the day, you just have to hope that people like what they get.
All right. Hey, Nicole. Oh, sorry. Never mind. Do your parenting thing.
I got it.
I don't even know what we were talking about because
I don't either.
Child.
I don't either. I just got
here. I was just gonna ask you about your comics in the classroom thing. You're gonna be working with Nisha Mulchin now. So what does that mean for the future of your project?
So I'm sitting on her panels talking about how bringing in my expertise as far as education is concerned and how fandoms help with mental health. But having taught in predominantly Title I schools, like we have a lot of mental health need. And so just in a lot of our conversations and a lot of our just things that showed up, that we kind of realized that we were kind of a good fit. And she is giving me more information. I know there's lots of things that she's working on. So it's still kind of up in the air and everything, but I'm excited to be partnering with Diversely Geek and having a lot of, like, I don't want to say airtime. That's not really the right word, but like having the place where you can start talking about it within the research. And she has a lot of research, and it's amazing because I'm like, I already knew all this stuff, but now there's actual research to back it up.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we forget that teachers know stuff, but we don't always have research that backs us up, and people really love research. And thank God for people like Kanisha who are doing the research, because I don't have the patience for that. But like just being in the classroom, kids, like anything about education, like how do we learn language? By listening. How do we label things? By watching people. Like you learn your first language by labeling things that people talk about.
Yeah.
And you essentially learn your second language the same way. It's just a lot slower and it needs a lot more meaningful content.
And I feel
doesn't get through my concrete head. I can't. Even Spanish, like as close as Spanish is to and I took Spanish my whole freaking childhood into high school before they were like, yeah, now you're in Spanish too, and the entire class after today is going to be taught in Spanish. I was like, see ya, this is not going to work.
Hey,
this coming from someone who still speaks only English.
Canada is apparently supposed to be a 2-language country, and I don't know a word of French. and no matter how many times I've gone through French class, and it's like, no, it's nothing stuck. All I know is how to say who cut the cheese. All thanks to Freakazoid.
Fromage. I know fromage, right? That's cheese, right?
Fromage, yeah.
Yeah.
I can say shut up in 4 different languages, but that doesn't really...
That's valuable. See, that's valuable. Teach us the real terms that we need.
Well, and I can swear in about 5, but
But that's where comic books will actually help. Maybe because I'm a very visual learner, and I'm sure there's a lot of students out there who are visual learners as well. If, for God's sakes, if comic books were a thing in my school to teach me math or science or something, I probably would have processed it way more than reading a textbook.
So what are some comic books that you're using to teach the kids?
So I've always had a myriad of whatever I could find on my shelf. Just in general, like I have Bone on my shelf. I have all kinds of other of everything.
Did you use like Superman and Batman and stuff like that too?
I've always had them on my shelf. It wasn't something that I could use in class necessarily.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. Yeah,
because up until 2016, I hadn't used one in actual like lesson planning because I couldn't get anybody to listen.
Yeah.
So I was using like when I had my ESOL students, they had news stories that they would dissect and then animate with a pictorial representation of whatever was happening in that sentence. And it was great for ESOL kids because then they could see the picture and connect it with the words on the page and still know what was going on, even if they weren't perfectly understanding English. And then I got a lot of Heinley abridged versions of illustrated classics. And while they were good, they weren't something my kids were dying to read. And then when I moved to Florida, we had this crazy time space between the time when testing was over and the last day of school. So it was like 6 weeks of time that I was expected to keep middle schoolers in their seat and refrain from killing each other without there being a test involved. That's another show too. But we had discussions like, how can we get our kids to sit down and just take this next 6 weeks in stride and pass? Because that was essentially like once the kids weren't accountable, they were done. And so we held them accountable with a comic book. And so my counterpart, she was all in it. She was like, this is exciting. And I don't know anything about comic books, but I'm totally willing to listen. And I said, I want to do X-Men. And we went back to the 80s and we did the Chris Claremont book. And the whole reason we did that book, just in general, is that I will go to jail for copyright infringement at some point in the world because there's a free PDF online. So the free PDF got copied in black and white 35 times. And the color PDF was scrolled on my smartboard. And so we had whole conversations about how to read a comic book and how stories are told and what are speech bubbles and thought bubbles and what does this mean and what does that mean? And how is the story told between panels, but in that white space between panels too. And we talked about facial expressions because there is a lot of research that talks about how kids don't understand facial expressions. They don't know why we have eyebrows. Like, why do women take so much time to paint them on? But like the point just in general is like, how do we interact with each other? And a lot of that's happening on the pages of a comic book. So kids aren't just understanding words and phrases and reading, but they're understanding the world and connecting to it in a different way.
Yeah.
X-Men is really all about the civil rights movement. I mean, so teaching in a Title I school where racism was a thing, and there were lots of issues about I hate you because you are. And it took all of this emotion out of talking about racism and put it talking about humans versus mutants. It made a whole lot more sense to them. And the one time that there is anything racial involved in the book, the kids were like, well, because we'd already spoken about the word in multiple situations throughout the year. They understood why that word was used. They understood all of the panels that went along with that word. They understood why it was used. I mean, it was so much bigger than just reading a comic book. It was understanding civil rights. It was understanding human emotion. It was understanding themes. It was understanding why people do what they do. It was understanding so many more things. And they also had X-Men at the time, the movie, which was loosely based on that comic book. And so there was a lot of visual representation that they had of the book as well. So it made sense, but it also gave them a place to have conversations about racism and just how we treat each other, like being an outcast or whatever. So that was my first real ability to do it. And it was fun. Like, I got to listen to kids talk. Kids drove the lesson. The kids were interested in what was happening in class. Kids were having conversations with each other, between each other, and to me. And it was so much more fun than just standing up there and trying to deliver information to them. Recently, I mean, with COVID and everything, the whole world stopped. So I kind of stopped too. And it was all I could do to try to teach my own children at the kitchen table and teach the 210 eighth graders I had, and not lose my mind and break another chair. and ruin the linoleum. But I looked and looked and looked for lots of indie books and found some. I just have like stacks that I haven't been able to get through yet, to make sure that they're appropriate. And during all of that, I sat on the textbook adoption committee, and both textbooks that were finalists in Polk County have entire units of graphic novels. And it's not a Marvel graphic novel. It's not a DC graphic novel. It's an indie comic. So the point is that it's a story that's not necessarily superheroes or whatever, you know, it's not what people assume comics are. But I've also picked up, the Boom, the first two, what was the word?
Graphic novels.
Yeah, that. Graphic novels for, Something is Killing the Children. And I'm going to go through that this summer and really start building lesson plans upon it and see how I can use other literature too. Because I think we can't just stop at comic books. It's great if you read comic books, but you have to also be able to read the other stuff, because that's what's going to get you through college or whatever. I mean, like, let's be honest, it's going to get you through high school. Being able to go through the really boring shit that you don't want to read, like fucking The Scarlet Letter.
And I know that Tom,
absolutely no offense, Grant, but Beowulf, because I thought I was going to lose my mind.
Well, I was gonna say it sounds like my comic book would be more educational than it actually is, but like I play very loose and fast with all the details about Beowulf.
Somebody's bell just rang.
That was really loud.
It's not mine this time.
I don't think it's mine.
That's okay.
It wasn't us, was it? Oh, okay.
So this show has been taken over by Mittens here. So the
Star is born.
The president of Catonia. But yeah, no, Tom, you said something earlier about comic books teaching you a whole different language, like words that you didn't know before, and that is something that you're tangled up, dude. That is something that I've definitely noticed too with my vocabulary. Is comic books have like I've added words to my vocabulary because of comic books.
Yep.
And if I didn't know a word, there's the dictionary.
See, and I never did that.
Dying breed of people who actually know how to use the dictionary.
Yeah, I didn't do that. For me, it was always I'm going to figure this out on my own somehow. Way. I mean, obviously, I knew how to use the dictionary. I used it when I was a kid, but like when I was just reading the comics, I was just like, I'm just reading words, man. I don't know what that means, but I get the context because there's an image with it. Yeah. And then I'm on again, and then I would get older, and some of those would just become natural words because as I got older and I was exposed to more words and more context, it's just like, oh, I get that now. That's just that thing. But I kind of always, because I read comics over and over and over and over again. And so I would hit that word again and again and again and again, and somehow it would just make sense to me, because even if I didn't know the strict definition, I understood it within the context. So that's kind of where I came from with it.
Yeah.
The true value of a comic book, though, is the same as we place on, children's literature. When we use picture books to teach things, we do that for a reason. Mm-hmm. And we do that so our kids understand context. They understand the world that they're living in. And I think overall, it teaches so much more than that. It's great vocabulary. I'm not even going to say that. And it's great for storytelling, and it's beautiful and wonderful. But at the same time, there's so much that gets told through speech bubbles and thought bubbles. And there's so much that gets taught through the facial expressions and how how they're used and the action and all the things that make comic books so special. And, you know, I think a lot of times we forget that kids are still kids and they love to have that, just that color, that action, there's something that picture books offer us. Cause I don't feel like even at 40 years old, I don't get a little bit giddy when I see a picture book that I loved when I was a kid. You know, and even so the like art that I've seen at conventions recently. I mean, even an artist re-rendering of whatever character that they loved so much, there's something that makes it theirs. And there's something that stylistically is amazing about that. And so, you know, if you're a fan of art and you're a fan of literature, you just kind of, I don't know, maybe you're supposed to be there. And that's what I love about it. Like, I don't know.
But I mean, like, what you could do is, you know, pick a comic book that kind of touches on like Greek mythology or like in Tom's case, you know, the Wizard of Oz. You know, you can show his work and then kind of compare it to the works of other storytellers throughout.
Yeah, they made like Comics Illustrated stuff, and there's like Frankenstein and Dracula, and you know, there's crazy cool Comics Illustrated that would be relevant to kids now.
There was really great fun ones like that too, and so History Illustrated isn't as fun, but like the Comics Illustrated, like I have the Mary Shelley comic, and I'm like, that's the Frankenstein comic is way better than the book.
Bill Sienkiewicz did a Moby Dick that's amazing. Like it's fully painted, like in that his style. He's like a painter from the 80s.
We connected with a couple of other artists that were, I don't know how Brian found them, but he saw the art and he was like, this is really amazing. And he started talking to the artist about the story. And he said, well, it's a lot of Kurosawa. And so it's what it makes up in pictures, it lacks in dialogue. And I said, oh, well, and so he sent me a couple of the pictures and I was talking to the duo that wrote it. And they said, well, it's based on the story of the 47 Ronin. And I went, oh, it was called 47 Furious Tales. And all of the characters are animals. And I said, well, you know, it would be interesting to see this book. How do I, you know, get my hands on it? And so get my hands on the book and start and read it. And if I can get my hands on the original material, we're going to do a compare and contrast. Like, why are the characters the types of animals that they are? Why are they squirrels and foxes and monkeys? And what, you know, what lends itself to that character being that animal choice? And he said, that's really interesting. I said, I can't broaden you on any other things that the lesson might imply because I don't have the book in front of me. Like, I don't know. But it's amazing when kids don't know something, because it was hilarious. Like, we were reading just a little excerpt of Frank Baum's Oz. And there was a little, like a side note about how in the book, the slippers are silver and in the movie they were red. And he's like, that my kids were like, why? And I said, because some things don't translate to the screen as well. What do you mean? They could have been silver. I said, no, they couldn't have been. Because when they made the movie, it was black and white. I saw it in color. Y'all, like, figure it out. But so you have this whole discussions about what kids don't know, and you're teaching them through what they did or didn't know about the art and the story and the movie and the, you know, they don't know what they don't know. They don't know anything. Kids don't know anything. But we just I have a good time with my kids. Like, we read Telltale Heart. Swear to God, my kids are like, this is like the oldest story ever. Why is this scary? And I said, well, think about it. Like, think about it in terms of the story. They were just oh, well. And so you kind of like builds like comparisons to other things. And they were like, oh, so like this or like this. It's the same as songs. My kids are like, what's the difference between they used Cardi B's WAP.
Yeah.
I just blanked on the concept. Shit. Explicit versus implicit, right? So I said implicit is when you imply it. Like I say something and you can gather my meaning. Does Cardi B do that? And they're like, that's explicit, miss. And I'm like, yeah. The kids are like, you've listened to it? So then I'm like, yes, I have. We play it. I'm like, no, you absolutely cannot. But they're drawn in by things that you can connect to real life stuff. And because they don't know anything, they only know what they can see on TikTok. Then
I would, if superheroes were on TikTok, what do you guys think would happen?
You mean real life?
Yeah, like.
You mean like Kick-Ass had a TikTok account?
I was just going to say Kick-Ass. That's kind of the concept of Kick-Ass.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if Mark Miller wrote Kick-Ass today, he would have TikTok. I guarantee you he would have TikTok. Yeah. I mean, there was those guys up in Seattle that were superheroes. Whatever that means. Phoenix Jones and his crew running around in their weird get-ups. I mean, it's a thing, but the reality is with superheroes is that they would be vigilantes. They can't really do anything outside of just general sort of, Good Samaritan style stuff. If they see something going down, they can't get involved. All they can do is call the cops and say, hey, somebody's ripping off this dude's car. Otherwise they're literally vigilantes and it's against the law. So, it's a weird situation with the real life superhero world.
I can almost see like Shazam doing something silly.
I guarantee you Shazam will be on TikTok. I guarantee you Shazam is on TikTok.
Tom, let me ask you, what about your original characters? If they were here in the real world, how would their social media be? I can hear
Critter
this.
has a Twitter account.
Twitter?
Yeah.
Cool.
I don't know why, but she does. It was just part of the story. She had a friend who was like gearing her up, with like utility belts and stuff. And she was like, oh yeah, and I've got your phone hooked up to Twitter so that when you do stuff, you can talk to people. And Critter's basically me, right? She's like, why are we doing this? Why is social media a thing? Stop. So that's part of the fun of Critter is basically she's just me. She's like, I hate all of this and I like all of this. And she has cat ears. So, I avoid a lot of social media stuff in my books. I mean, really, honestly, a lot of my books are like fantasy based, so there's no real room for it to exist anywhere. Penny for Your Soul exists in the real world. There's a little bit of talk of like YouTube and stuff in there, but it's all very like, yeah, it's here, but we're not gonna dive into that stuff because I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
How about your characters, Grant? Would they be using social media?
Yeah, we haven't gotten into that yet. Probably Mooney would be the best at social media because Mooney is the cat character. And nothing's more popular on social media than cats.
Oh, absolutely.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
You almost have like a OnlyFans just specifically for cats.
I guarantee you there's OnlyFans for cats. 100%. 100%. Most people don't really realize OnlyFans is not just porn. OnlyFans is basically like a Patreon, right? You can do anything you want there, but it allows for the porn stuff. Patreon doesn't allow for a lot of that stuff, but OnlyFans is just like, bring us your money. But OnlyFans is filled with dudes that are like, yeah, man, here's how to like cook stuff, and here's like how to. I'm a sports guy, and I'm doing whatever. OnlyFans is filled with all kinds of stuff that's like normal, but people have to pay to see it still. And what do people pay the most for? Boobs.
That's true. You know what? We can't deny boobs sell. Unfortunately.
Hey, listen, I wish he was joining us, but Jim Noble from Totally Rad Comics, he'll tell you.
Yeah. I mean, this is not new information that we're giving us. Like all these people on the internet are like, oh, boobs. I don't understand. What's the big deal? Like for 2,000 years, we all like the boobs.
It cracks me up because, like, yes, after all this time, we're still trying to wrap our brains around the fact that sex sells.
Yeah, it's a real difficult notion.
So, can I please shout out to our friend, because I am giving Brian hell for Pops, but I think this is kind of his way of aiding and abetting his but Darius McDaniels that sits on our supernatural shows and quite a few shows that Rails and Hills has had, the Godzilla one and the Mighty Morphin,
the Power Rangers one,
the Power Rangers one. And so he found out it was my birthday next week. And he's like, oh, I'm going to send her something. And so Brian didn't tell me. And the box came and he says, here's your birthday present. He didn't tell me who it was from or anybody or anything. And he hands me this box. And I looked at it and I'm like, okay. So, okay. And Maleficent is my favorite villain. And it is my favorite fairy tale. And it always has been. I wore the big old freaking hole in my VHS of Sleeping Beauty because I watched it 785 times. So I got Maleficent. And I said, geez, Brian, I hope you didn't just buy me Pops for my birthday. And he said, I didn't buy this one for you. And so I looked at the thing and it was from Darius. And I was like, okay. So it was like, all right. So I shout out, right, to him on Facebook. Social media, whatever, because I only know him from social media. So then I get another box and he's like, here's the rest of your present. And I'm like, the rest of my what? The rest of my present. So he sent me Crowley and he sent me the other Maleficent. So I didn't have any Maleficent except for the one that was a dragon, because that's the one that Brian bought me long time ago. So I was like, cool, I got Maleficent and I got Crowley. So the only one that I have left to get is Charlie, and I'm never going to find Charlie. But so shout out to Darius McDaniels for buying better presents than my husband.
Is this your people to buy you, Charlie?
If they can find it,
hint.
I will pay them. I mean, I will pay them. I just have never seen Charlie. It's never been anywhere that I've ever been. Huh?
I don't know. I don't know the show. Is he a major character?
Yeah. Charlie is. She is
Felicia Day's character. Yeah.
So I have Sam. I have Dean.
How do I know this? I don't.
I don't know how you know it. Because you talk to me.
I'm only a fan, slightly of Felicia Day. So.
So there's 5 in this series. So I have all of them now except for Charlie. And I have Baby and Dean, and I have Castiel with his wings, and I have.
I'm only this much into Felicia Day's character, so.
Oh well, Tom will get this. Felicia Day's character on Supernatural, Charlie, is she's into girls. Her girlfriend's Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz.
Which Dorothy from the Wizard? You know how many Dorothys there are?
Well, in the supernatural world,
in the supernatural, I have zero knowledge.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
in the TV show Supernatural,
I remember.
There was
you would remember the lesbian tryst, wouldn't you?
Well, there was a character that brought that opened the like the realms to like Wonderland and to Oz.
Okay.
And Charlie fell in love with Dorothy, and they went off to live in Oz.
Got it.
Well, to kind of bring it back to cons, when
and you know what? Just a side note, this is why I teach middle school. I think because I'm surrounded by perpetually 12-year-old boys.
Whatever. What can I say? I love women. Anyway,
I am a solid 13. Solid. Listen, I got my Scully Barbie right here.
Nice.
Oh. Well, then.
Okay. All right, you're forgiven.
This will come out in a minute. We'll show this stuff off. But to bring it back to cons, when you're at a con, I know you're working usually, but what is it at cons that you're excited to see, Tom?
Nothing. I've done too many. There's nothing at a con anymore that I'm excited to see. I'm excited to be there, and I'm excited to see who comes, because every city you go to, you're going to see different fans like that know you, which is great, because a lot of times I only meet them at the cons, and I'm excited to get new people to be like, hey, I like what you do. But as far as like panels and like guests and stuff, very rarely do I care. There's a couple of times I've been to like a couple of horror shows, and they've had some horror actors there that I just kind of was like, oh my God, I have to go over there. But I get really starstruck with the people that I really want to meet. So like, for example, Aaron Gray, I have been past Aaron Gray's booth over the last 20 years 1,000 times. And I cannot stop and talk to her. I can't do it. I stop and I look, and she looks up and she smiles. I'm like, bye, I gotta go. I can't do this. So I have really, really bad starstruck problems with actors that I really like. There's some that are like sort of just on the skirting of they're like the stars, whatever. It's like, oh yeah, hey, cool, what's going on? But the ones that are like deep in the childhood psyche, like I get so scared to do it. And so when this horror con I went to, JP, no, not JP, PJ Souls, who's from Halloween.
Yes.
My favorite like horror movie is Halloween. And so she's there. And so she's like down here, and I'm over here with my booth, like about 6 booths between us. And through the whole show, I just keep like looking, like, is she there? Like, what's she doing? Hey, PJ, are you there? Like, what's going on? And I'm just sitting in my booth, like terrified to even get up. And on the last day of the con, it was kind of slow. And I was like, I have got to go do this. I'm being ridiculous. And so basically my problem is I don't know how to break the ice. Like, I don't know how to be the fan that's just like, PJ, what's up? How are you? Cool. Like, I want to be loose. But I also want to be engaged. Like, I don't want to be just like, hey, what's going on? Yeah, you're in movies. Like, I want her to know that I appreciate the effort and the content that she's made. But I don't want to be like, hey, remember on Halloween scene 27 when you walk through the door and then something was like, I don't want to be that guy either. So
if you don't
know what I mean?
We've all been that nerd.
Yeah, and I don't want to do that. And so I just shut it down and I don't go talk to them. So, but I realized, because I was at a horror con, right? And I had my Ursa Minor book, which is a horror book. So I was like, I can give her my book. I can just be like, hey, I just want to give you this as a gift. And like, you know, thank you for doing Halloween and Stripes and everything. I really like your stuff. So I wrote, PJ Souls is the one who gets strangled by the TV cord, or by the phone cord by Michael. But she's also the one that she sits up and her top falls down. She's like, you see anything you like? That's PJ. Yeah. So I wrote on the comic, I hope you see something you like, Tom Hutchinson, you know, so I tied it into her character. And so I went down there, and she was all alone. Well, she wasn't alone. She was talking to like somebody, I don't know, her manager or something. And so she was turned around, and I walked down, and I was like, oh, and I almost turned back because she was talking to somebody else. But as kind of got close enough and she saw me, and she turned, and I was like, well, God, here, I don't know what to do anymore. And so she immediately, it was really funny. And a lot of movie stars are like this. She immediately cued in that I didn't know what the hell to do. I didn't know what to say. And she just like turned it on. She was like, what's going on? How are you? And she saw my badge, and she's like, oh, you're a vendor? Like, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm my booth is there. Just like totally like just schmuck. And then I realized I had this thing in my hand, and I was like, oh yeah, I do comics. I write comics. I do a horror comic. I wanted to give this to you as a gift. I just wanted to say hi because I'm a big fan. And it started to roll because she got it rolling. And then she turned it around on me, and she was looking at the book. She's like, you do this? I was like, yeah. She's like, what do you do? I was like, I wrote it. She's like, you wrote it? So she started to make it about me. And I was like, this is really weird. I don't know what's going on. But she made it really, really easy. And there's a lot of actors that do this. They've already had all of these experiences. I was nothing new to her as the starstruck fanboy. And so I was like, this is for you. I just take it home, enjoy it. Thank you for coming to the show. I appreciate it. And I turned to leave. She says, well, don't you want a picture? And I was like, oh, of course. Yes, of course I want a picture. Of course. I picked a picture out, and I was like, I want this one. And, she signed it for me. And I started to pull money out. She's like, what are you doing? I was like, well, what are they, $25? She says, no, we're trading books for book for the thing. And I was like, that was not my intention. Like, I was not coming down here to like swipe an autograph from me. She's like, no, it's cool. We swap product, at these shows all the time. And I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. So, and then she took a picture with me too, just again for free. So it was like, she made it awesome. And she did it in such a way that like, I feel like I can figure out how to do it again, when I see somebody else that I want to meet. Like I was at WonderCon, and I was going from the Aspen booth to somewhere else and to go see a friend. And I came back a wrong way down a different aisle. And I was like, oh God, I don't know where I am. And I hung a turn, and I ran smack into 3 booths that was Holly and Will and Chaka from Land of the Lost, just like whoop, like right in front of me. And I didn't know they were going to be there because like I didn't look at the list. And this was like I just kind of stood there like, Lost? Is that WonderCon? Like, what is happening? And I freaked out. I could not do anything. I raced back to the Aspen booth, and I had to tell everybody. I was like, "Did you know that Holly and Will are here? Like, what is happening?" And they all looked like I was an idiot. I was like, "What the hell is Land of the Lost?" I'm like, "Oh, you guys get it, man." And so, but again, I forced myself to go back, and Kathy Coleman, Holly. She, as soon as I came back, she was immediately on it, man. She was just like, what's going on? Hey, I'm Holly, and and she's pointing down the other people. Yeah, we're down here. And she's got this big Sleestag head, and she's just carrying around a Sleestag head. She's like, this is my buddy. I don't remember what she called it. This is my buddy. Like, oh my God, you guys are fantastic. And years later, we actually had Wesley Uri, who plays Will. He actually came on our movie show. With Jim Noble and David Fott. So we had him on a Land of the Lost dinosaur show as a guest. And you watch that episode and you just see me like, what is my life right now? What is going on? How is Wesley Uri on my show?
They
it's crazy.
have a habit of doing that to me where it's like, oh, by the way, we're gonna interview the creator of Mortal Kombat. And by the way, guys, it's been a year since we've interviewed Master Pacina for the first time, and I'm just like,
like the second time he's on the show, she's still like, I'm
just gonna sit here like this.
And it's funny because that's what David does. Like David Fought, like we'll be the 4 of us, and you'll just see David down in the bottom corner, like literally where I am, and he's just like this. He's so funny. He's hysterical. He is absolutely hysterical.
I'm gonna tell you, it doesn't get better though, because when you have that first experience that you're like, oh, I could do this, and then it's like Dean Cain was mine. I told him, I said, I have nothing intelligent to say to you right now, so I'm just gonna sit here so my 15-year-old self can be enamored with you. And he laughed at me and said, it is totally okay. I'll talk to you. And so we talked about the kids and, living in Florida and if I liked it or whatever. And it was great. And he's like, well, I'll sign this and we can take a picture. And I said, okay. And I have nothing to say. I said, my 15-year-old self is screaming inside of me right now. And I don't know what to say to you. He's like, cool. You don't have to say anything. Cause he totally carried the rest of the conversation. And I shook my head and said, So I vaguely remember the hug and the picture and him asking permission to hug me. And I said, you don't have to ask him anything. And he said, okay. I'm like, I'm such a fucking idiot.
We had Thomas Jane come by the booth one time, and it was funny because it was the end of the show, and I'm sitting there like doing paperwork or something, and then one of the helpers was like working on the racks, and Thomas Jane like walks by in front of me, and I look up, and I'm like, oh shit, that's Thomas Jane right there, and I'm thinking he's just going to keep walking, but he stops right at the rack, and that's where the guy that was helping was doing it. So I just I don't say anything, I just stare and I look. I'm like, okay, let me see what this guy does with Thomas. And so he starts talking, and because Thomas actually stopped for Legend of Oz, he thought that was really cool. And so he was looking at the books. He's like, this is really cool. Tell me what this is. So the guy's telling him what it is. Blah 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 blah. This is that. This is really awesome, man. This is really good. How many books do you have? Like, whatever. And the guy says, so we have these issues, and it would be this much for it. And I looked up and I said, Mr. Jane can have whatever he wants, because he had no idea that it was Thomas Jane. No clue. And I was like, Mr. Jane can have whatever he wants. Set him up with a set. And he said, hey, dude, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm like, dude, it's fine. It's fine. Please. Thank you for the interest in what we do. But yeah, it's funny how some people like won't even know who the actors are. And then others just like cue in immediately.
Yeah, well, that's funny he mentions Thomas Jane, because Thomas Jane is actually a big comic book fan, just like Nicolas Cage.
He was there with Tim Bradstreet. Like they were together at a booth doing something at the con. So
yeah. This last weekend, the show that we were at, the show that I told you about, that I was talking to the promoter about you for next year.
Yep.
There was a Godzilla booth. Nothing but Godzilla toys. You would have been like there.
Oh, I lost my mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lost my mind.
Like legitimate Godzilla toys. So like
okay. And now I'm curious. What was the name of this guy who ran this booth?
Well, he's based out of Tampa. I don't know what I don't remember what his name is. But he has all the actual like expensive stuff from Japan, from the stuff that are like that big to the stuff that's like that big.
Enormous.
My wallet knows them well.
Yeah,
because
and the first person I thought of outside of my youngest son was you. So like I was like, Tom would be like buying everything. Oh, he's got Godzilla.
Who else has Godzilla needlepoint on their desk? Right?
You astound me. Like you actually did that needlepoint?
No, I won't.
Oh, okay.
No, I won't lie about that. That was actually a gift from my editor, Carrie Castor. It was a Christmas gift one time. But I was like, yeah, that's friggin' awesome. So yeah, it's on my desk here. Yeah.
I had a science teacher who, in high school, who was a huge fan of Godzilla, and he actually ran a magazine and did the conventions and stuff like that. And so I don't know if he's still in Manitoba. I wouldn't be. Yes.
Yeah, that's GFan. He runs GFan and he runs GFest in Chicago. Yeah, I know JD. I know JD. Yes, yeah. I have met him at GFest before. Yeah.
I remember being like the only person in my class that was excited to watch Godzilla films.
So you asked me like, what do I look forward to at cons? Nothing. But I go to GFest and I lose my shit. It's an unbelievable, highly focused thing. I remember the first time I went. I was there on day one. They have it's like a con. It's in a hotel, so all the ballrooms are where you have your panels and so on. But then there's the dealer's room, and I didn't understand how amazing this was. Everybody talked about it, so I go and I'm there early, and there's like a line to get in, and they're like, yeah, it'll probably be a couple hours. I'm like, couple hours to get in? They're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, but it's early, so that's fine. So I come back like 2 hours later. The line is still there, and they're like, yeah, it's about 2 hours. I'm like, this is the dealer's room, right? Like, this isn't like a roller coaster. Like, what's going on? They're like, no, dude, it's the dealer's room. I'm like, okay. So I come back like 2 hours later. It's still long. So I'm like, oh, well, I'm just going to get in the line. They said, yeah, just get in line, dude. So I get in line, and it takes, I don't know, about an hour and a half. And they let me in the doors. It's like the doors open to heaven, right? I step inside this room. The hall is probably it's probably, I don't know how to, like, if you've been to a panel at a Comic-Con, imagine it's like 4 of those, right? So it's not like gigantic, but it's big. And I'm walking in, and it is just literally wall to wall Godzilla. I didn't know where to go. I just stood in the doorway. Like, where do I go? Do I go left? Do I go right? Do I go straight? It's stuff standing up. There's boxes under tables. It was the most incredible moment in my life as far as like, dude, where am I right now? This is ridiculous. And it's Godzilla, it's Gamera, it's Ultraman, it's, you know, a little bit of Robotech and Gundam stuff. But it's 90% Godzilla, and I lost my mind. It was incredible. So yeah, and they had Showa era actors from the 70s that were there. And I was, God damn, I'm gonna get my picture taken with these people. And I did. And I can never remember his name. He's been in a couple of these things. He was from Terror of Mechagodzilla with Tomoko Ai, who was the girl. They're basically the Romeo and Juliet of Godzilla because they were not meant to be. So I got her picture taken with her, got her autograph. She was amazing, awesome. And then I go and sit with him, and he's super cool too. But as he's writing, he's looking at me, and I'm just like, because literally they sat us next to him, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do. And he's just writing, and he's looking at me, and he starts cracking Steven Seagal jokes at me. He's like, Steven Seagal, and I'm just like, holy God, what's happening right now? This is amazing. So yeah, I got ribbed by a Godzilla Showa art actor about looking like Steven Seagal. And then a few years later, I met actually a suit actor who played a number of monsters, but he was Godzilla in 1984, which that's one of my favorite ones. And Ken, oh my God, I'm so terrible with their names. Ken Sakamura, I think is what it was. And so what he would do, because he's a suit actor, he would sign your picture and he would take pictures with you. But what he would do is he liked to pose like the monsters. He'd be like, like this, right? In your pictures. And so, but I didn't know what was happening. And so the guy had my phone and he's taking pictures and I'm standing there just like, nah, hey, what's going on? And he's doing this, right? And then he sees that I'm not posing. So he starts to give me static about, no, you have to do the pose. And the guy, unbeknownst to me with my phone, just keeps taking pictures. Click, 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 click. And so I basically have this storyboard of Ken, being like, no, you have to pose, do the thing. And then finally at the end, we're both like, but it's like this series of photos of this whole scenario. It's amazing. It's amazing. If you're a Godzilla fan and you can get to Chicago, it's not happening this year because they canceled with COVID again. Go, because it will blow your mind. It will absolutely blow your mind.
Anything outside of Tokyo, that's like the number 1 Godzilla convention in the world.
Yeah. And there are a few. There's a few Monster Mania things that are around, and they have some Godzilla actors and so on. But G-Fest is the place.
And see, now I can see the wheels turning. He's like, G-Fest.
Yeah, for sure. I was really bummed that they canceled it this year. I kind of figured that they would, but I was bummed. But it'll be back next year, and I'll be there.
So you want to show off some of their art?
Yes.
So we've always had it. Like, if it wasn't for Brian, I wouldn't talk to anybody, because this is how bad I am. So we were on the strip, walking in Vegas, and we did this every weekend, right? Like, we'd go out on Friday night, watch a movie or whatever. We walked the strip.
Like 15 minutes.
We literally lived 15 minutes from the strip, and we're walking down the strip. We were at the strip, right? When we saw, anyways. So I look up, and passing me by is C. Thames Howard, or C. Thames Howell. So I'm like, howdy, boy. And he turned around and he was like, yeah, hey. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm such a fucking idiot. Like, I don't notice until he's walking past me and it finally clicks in my brain. So I've always had an in. Like, that's the only other time where I've seen a famous person and been like, I'm an idiot. Why are you handing that to me? I don't want it. Put it away. So then there was we've met like Manu Bennett, and we've met
John
Barrowman and all of these people, but like above all, and Zachary Levi. So above all, I would have never met any of them, and still to this day don't know how I managed to get through any of it if it hadn't been for him. And the fact that I was pregnant the first time I met Manu Bennett, and then had Oliver the next time I had met Manu Bennett. So that was my in. So the only other time that I actually got into a line was to talk to Tyler Hoechlin. So the story about Tyler Hoechlin is that Tyler Hoechlin was in Teen Wolf, and a friend of mine from high school was one of the makeup artists, the principal makeup artist on Teen Wolf. He did all of the prosthetics and he did all of the makeup.
For the MTV version.
For the MTV Teen Wolf.
Okay.
So I messaged him on Facebook and I said, I'm standing in Tyler Hoechlin's line right now and I'm going to drop your name. And he said, cool. He said, go for it. And he says, and if you have a chance, tell him to call me. I said, all right. So I said, I'm a huge fan and I just wanted to come and say hi. And I said, a friend of mine. And he said, who do I know? And I said, Eric Horn. And he jumped out of his seat and he was like, are you serious? Like, could you call him right now? I haven't seen this dude in like 4 years.
He didn't even say Eric. He's like, I love porn.
I love porn. He's like screaming. This is Eric's real name, mind you. Okay. Real name. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, dude, you got to call him like right now. And so I called him on my Facebook call. Like I Facebook called him. And so before I know it, my phone is no longer in my hand. He's holding it, talking to my friend on the phone. And he's like, I can't believe like all this, like 10 minutes we're standing there, and they're shooting the shit on the phone. And they're like, we got to get together. And when's the next time you're in LA, brother? And I'm like, hello. And so like, he's like, dude, that was the coolest thing. Like they hang up and he's like, that's the coolest thing. I'm so glad you came to my table. I'm so glad I got to talk to him. And I'm like,
but the way he
awesome,
the way he acted it though towards the fans,
was like
that's why he was chosen to be the
up
CW
from the
Superman.
table and walked around the table and talked to me and took my phone out of my hand and just had this whole thing. Now, mind you, I left the table and didn't even get a freaking picture. So I'm like, but I had this memory of the fact that he really was jazzed about the people, and I was like, that's all. So. It doesn't get any better because I still didn't stop myself long enough to say, can I take a picture with you? Because I'm an idiot. But the point is that you feed on the good times. I try to feed on the good times and not the bad times when you meet people that are dicks.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I can't do that, because there was a C2E2 where John Cusack was at it. And I was like, if I go meet John Cusack and he's a dick, this is going to be a real problem for my DVD collection.
So his probably is that he probably would be a dick to you.
Yeah, and I don't want
heard that.
I don't want that experience. I'm just like, you know what? I'm good. I'm going to enjoy the content. I'm not going to worry about shaking his hand or any of that kind of stuff. And that's part of my like fear of meeting these guys, because I've heard stories from all kinds of different actors and stuff. This guy's problematic.
But then you know what? I've also met people that everybody told me was a dick, and then I met them and they were perfectly fine.
Sure. Everything is situational. Everybody's going to have bad days, and then those bad days are the ones that get spread around. Oh, I met this guy at a con and he was terrible. So for the rest of his life, he's a terrible con guy because he had a bad day, It's so you got to take it all with a little bit of a grain of salt.
That's what everybody said about Dean Cain, and I was like, he was freaking fantastic. I don't care. This lives in my brain forever.
But we were supposed to have Gary Busey.
So there's also this in the comic, like some comic creators. I've heard a lot of stories about certain people.
Well, Chris Claremont is not my favorite comic person anymore. Like this image of like this really cool guy that wrote this book that I love, and he
kind of looked
a douche.
He was
he was a douche, and I'm like, if you don't want to be there, don't be there. If you don't want to meet the people that are going to oogle about your book, then don't be there. Don't talk to them. Don't do it. But I mean, I get that there's some things they have to do, but I guess the saying is true. Don't meet your idols because you'll be disappointed. Maybe that's the case, but I mean, we've met really awesome people.
Except me.
Say that.
I met Adam West several years ago, and he was tired. He was grumpy and tired. So you know what, I gave it to him. I'm like, you know what, whatever. You're old. You're grumpy. You know, I'm not gonna hold it against him. But I mean, there were you know, even cosplayers that gave me.
That's a
attitude,
whole.
And I'm just like, no, that is unacceptable. That you know, and then of course I'm hearing, oh, but she's selfish. She was so good with me. And it's like, yeah, but she was a bitch to me.
Well, but there's also that whole, like, you can only give people the benefit of the doubt for so long. Like, we went to a signing at a comic book shop in Las Vegas, and we met Stan Lee. And he talked you through the lot. Like, he was not done talking to you by the time they brought the next person to sign this line that went through okay. And he was in his 70s then, or his 80s. I don't know. Yeah. He was still, he was older, and he was still talking to the fans because that's what he cared about. And it was the handlers who was shooing people through the line and cutting you short. And we had the same thing. We did photo op. We did photo ops with Michael Hooker and Ming Na. And I swear to God, they talked you right out of the line. Like, they were into it. They were like, I'm so glad you're here. Like, Ming Na's holding the hands of my children and talking about how sweet they are. And she's bye. And still talking to us as we're getting shooed out of the photo op. We did give chocolate covered pretzels to Michael Rooker. So,
it's one of the things with cons now is that, and it's great that all these people are here, right? That they're taking part in what we do in some capacity. It's really great, but it's not a great experience. And I remember when I met Stan Lee, it was 1990, maybe 94. So I was there. I was at San Diego Comic-Con. I was with a friend of mine, and we were just walking through the hall. We were in the comic book like retail area looking at comics. And I'm just kind of looking around while he's looking at stuff, and I'm like, okay, where are we going next? And I do a double take. I'm like, yo, and I tap him on my shoulder. Is that Stan Lee sitting at that table? And he looks over and says, yeah, that's Stan Lee. I said, why is there no line? Like, no line. And he's like, I don't know. Maybe he's leaving. And so I was like, so we walk over, and we there's somebody owns because he's sitting at like a retailer booth of some sort. And we're like, so is he leaving? Like, what's happening? He said, no, he just got here. He's hanging out. And then he points down the row, like right next to him is John Romita Sr. sitting right next to him. And there's like 4 people there. And I was like, seriously? Like, what is happening? How much are the autographs? He said, it's free autographs. Just come buy a book and get. So we're like, yeah. So we went and bought Spider-Man books, came back, gave him to Stan. Stan, what's going on? He's like, Excelsior. He does the whole thing. Excelsior. How's your con? He's amazing. Like, he is everything that if you've never met Stan, everything that you see is real. Now, whether he's putting on the act or not, we don't know. But the public persona of Excelsior, that's real. And he gives us all of that, and we're just like freaking out. It's like, this is so cool. And he says, now go down there and meet John. And I'm like, that's John Romita Sr. Go meet John. Go. That's what he told us. Go meet John. So we go down and we meet John. John, how are you? And we didn't have books that he could sign because we had like modern Spider-Man. He could have signed them if he wanted to, but it was modern Spider-Man books. We were like, so we don't have any old stuff. Sorry, we saw Stan. We got his autograph. He's like, cool, no problem. Do you want like a sketch? And we were like, well, how much are the sketches? He's just like, I'm just sketching. So he does free sketches. John Romita Sr. does free sketches at San Diego Comic-Con in 93, 94. And my mind is blown. So that was, and that will never again happen. Never will that happen with modern comics. What's that?
Were you living in San Diego at that time?
No, we just came down for the con. Just came down for the con. as we had done. 92, I think, was my first San Diego Comic-Con, and we went every year for like 20 years before I missed a con. But yeah, the early days were amazing. Even when Image had just started, they were stars, but it was still easy enough to like just walk up to a table and just be like, "Yo, sign my books." They're like, "Cool, signing books." It's not now where there's like 1,000 people in line and 90% of them are flippers. You know, it's not real. It's not real,
Yeah.
you know, and that's why it's all crazy now, is because of the flipping. Flipping signatures, grading, all that kind of stuff. So it's a bummer that it is what it is, but
when we went to sorry,
go ahead.
We went to San Diego Comic-Con, and I don't know where I was. I must have been sitting in some ridiculous hall or something. And Brian was walking the floor, and he ran into Bruce Campbell. And he is like, "Oh my God, I just have to shake your hand and say, I love everything you do." And he's like, "Dude," he's walking totally by himself. Like just walking the floor.
That happens more often than you thought. We saw a year.
Talks to him for 10 minutes and they walk. Like that's an authentic meet. Like that. You don't get that anymore.
There was one time we saw. Yeah. I don't remember when this was. This was still a while back. But there was, what was it? John Heater, Napoleon Dynamite was just wandering through. Jamie Foxx just wandering through. I remember once I was at the CrossGen booth when they still existed, and I was there getting a signature or sketch or something. And I think it was Ron Mars and I can't think of the artist's name, but they were sitting in the booth, and they saw from the other angle. I didn't see him coming. They saw from the other angle. Rob Van Dam was coming down the aisle, and they both lost their minds and just got up and left. They were like, "Rob Van Dam," and they ran off and got a picture with Rob Van Dam. And then they came back and sat down again, and we're all like, "What just happened?" They were like, "Yo, Rob Van Dam is over there," and they got a picture. So yeah, I mean, even the superstars freak out on the other superstars. So
yeah,
it's fun when you can do it.
Aaron Ashmore has come to our convention several times in my city, and he always walks around. And there was one time where, I had left to get food, and I came back, and there he was, just watching the belly dancers dance. And I actually walked with him back to his booth, and we were just chit-chatting about nothing. Just yeah.
See, we're speaking of like cons and stuff, we're friends with the promoters of the people that put on the show near you, Grant, the great American Phil. I think it's the Philadelphia con.
Okay. I mean,
I don't know.
That's not that near to me. I mean, that's like a 4.5 hour drive, but
I think that's like the closest big con to you, right?
Yeah.
So do you have any con experience? Do you have any stories?
Well, I've only been doing this comic book since quarantine, so I don't have a lot of Comic-Con experience.
Well, as a fan, like going?
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, I used to go to the comic book conventions when I was a kid, which is back in like the early 90s when it was just like crazy. Like I remember like it was like an hour and a half wait to get Mark Silvestri to sign my comic book when I was like 14 years old. Like if that gives you an idea of how crazy comic book conventions were as a kid. Recently, I've met, everybody from Star Trek: The Next Generation, of course. And yeah, I had the same experience where LeVar Burton was just sitting in a booth by himself. And my wife went up and started talking to him. And because there were no fans around, she got to stand and talk to him for quite a while. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, man.
So some things that we like to pick up ourselves at cons when we're not meeting celebrities or other comic book creators, we go down to Artist Alley, where there's a lot of people that do great work that the mainstream probably will never see. And Tom, I think you can kind of agree on that. There's a lot of great people in Artist Alley, from artists to writers. So you want to show off some of your art that
okay, do me a favor and figure out how I'm supposed to take that and make it a link and send it to somebody in Messenger. Because apparently I'm an idiot.
Okay.
So I look for stuff that's different because I love comic art, but I'm one of those people that I love the twist on things, and I like all things geeky, which means that I don't necessarily see it and you can't necessarily buy it in a store. So I am into the funky, handbags and crazy stuff that people make. That being said, I have seen more artists. I saw more artists at Central Florida Comic Con this past week that their art was just that I just liked it. And I bought a lot that I probably shouldn't have, but I did. So these are actually the prints from Diversely Geek. So
I like that.
These are their,
this one's for the Pulse Foundation.
The Pulse Foundation. And this is the LGBTQ Steven Universe, which I'm not necessarily part of this fandom, but I can get behind cool shit. So
okay.
And then if you know me, you know that I love the child. So, there's this little, in her take, she said that this artist, she's like, I always have a little bit of a take on whatever character. If I love them, I want to enjoy writing or drawing them. And then, so this is her, Ray and BB-8.
Oh.
But I just really like the colors of this one.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, she's my princess. So that's Aurora. And now, unfortunately, I don't know a lot of their names now because I have cards for everybody and stuff. But here's my
Aurora with tattoos.
Oh, that's cool.
My tatted Aurora. And if you look at her tattoos, they all have something to do with the story itself. So Maleficent in there, the fairies, the spindle, the rose, her crown. When the owl is dancing with the jacket, Once Upon a Dream. Like that, was my thing. I got all nerdy. And then of course Sabrina.
Okay.
So when you look for these things, Nicole, are you looking mainly at the art style, or are you looking for a specific character?
I think it depends on whatever I see. Like a lot of times it's the art that will draw me to the booth, and then I see what other kinds of things they have, and they just happen to have every one of my fandoms.
So it's a little bit of both.
So I guess it's a little bit of both.
Because we had, I had a thing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's fine.
I was going to say, at the last convention I did, I had a thing where a couple different guys came up and they asked, you have such and such a character. And I don't know if they were just going up to every booth and doing that, or if they were just.
Lots of people collect a thing and they'll just go to everybody and be like, do you do mermaids? Do you do unicorns? Do you do cyclops or whatever? That's a very typical, even at my booth, people will come up and be like, do you have this thing? And I'm like,
nope.
No. Because we don't do that, because that's a fandom and we do our own things. Do you like supernaturals? I'm like, no, this is my stuff. So yeah, but yeah, no, lots of people just collect a thing.
But if
you'll see a lot of sketchbooks that are like a theme, it's all Batman, it's all Wonder Woman, it's all Zatanna, whatever.
Well, I think sometimes if they see something that's similar to another fandom, they might be.
Yeah, that's that parallel. That's that parallel thing. Yeah. Hey, I like Buffy, but this Ursa Minor thing looks cool. Like, what's going on? And then you can kind of push them in that direction.
And then, so this was the other one. Brian found this one for me, and I kind of couldn't help myself. So
that is cute.
That's a great cartoon, by the way.
I am, yeah. Talk about things that probably don't necessarily mean they're canon, but I just really like it. But it's just fun to, I don't know, it's fun to go. And I pick up cards for people that do all kinds of different stuff. Like the girls who do the Harley and Ivy print also make t-shirts and are big fans of Winona Earp. So like there's a whole fandom that they're kind of catering to, I guess, you know, but I think when you can finally see your fandom in immortalized by fans that also enjoy it, I think that that's the other thing. It's like we're looking for things that are important to us. Like, I mean, I was late to the party on a lot of things. Like I was super late to the party on Buffy and Angel, and I was super late to the party on Firefly, and I was super late to the party on Schitt's Creek, and these all ended up being things that I loved. And it was just because I understood the humor, or I understood something about the story and I connected with it. It was just fun. So meanwhile, you know, I'm spending money that I have to work really hard to have. But
Beast is my ultimate favorite X-Men, and I have yet to find an artist who can actually draw him that isn't a feral version of him.
I like the feral version the best.
I like his kind-hearted mentality, though. Like I love.
You just go ask somebody; they'll do it. Just tell them you want it, and they'll do it. You'll get an original.
The cartoon version that we grew up with in the 90s, I think, is the version that I always have in my head. And the only other version that I feel is even close, what is that guy's name in the First Class?
Oh,
what is the guy? I don't know the guy's name.
Bodies.
He was in Warm Bodies, and I think that he did justice to what I remember. Just because the way I see him as an actor is that there's a warmth about him too.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that I don't appreciate Kelsey Grammer, but at the same time, like,
Kelsey Grammer almost seems like too on the nose of a cast.
Oh my God! Why did you have to bring that up?
We're gonna give poor Tom a heart attack by the end of the show.
Okay,
Grammer is the beast. I had wiped that from my head, dude.
No.
Well, because so many people love his voice, and I don't know why.
No, he has the personality for sure. Or if he was doing like the voice of a cartoon, that I could tune into. But to see him with all the blue, blue Kelsey Grammer was like, no, somebody didn't do this right.
It really could have been a little bit better with the makeup for sure.
Oh man!
But yeah, that was like the dream casting of Beast having Kelsey Grammer because of the fact that
it's not my dream.
Okay, who would you pick?
Well, here's the thing, because we were talking about Beast. Beast has really only been a human a handful of like human. A handful of times in history. Like he started off, he was just a big bulky human dude. When he went to X Factor, he kind of reshifted and became that dude again. Most of the time he's a furry dude of some kind. So it kind of depends on what you want to cast. Like with First Class and with Kelsey Grammer, he was shifting. But in most of the time when you see Beast, he's just hairy dude. So for me, it's like, I think you could put Kelsey Grammer's voice on a CG furry dude, and you'd have something that worked better than watching Kelsey Grammer jump on wire work. Like that's ridiculous. What's happening? Hey, let's put this 50-year-old dude on wires and have him jump around like Beast. No, this is bad. But if he had his voice as a CGI character, I think you'd have the best of both worlds. You could have a cool looking Beast and you could have the cool voice.
Kind of like how Ruffalo did the motion. Well, I mean, Ruffalo was, Bruce Banner, but then for the Hulk, he did all the motion capture.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably. I mean, I don't know how limber Kelsey Grammer is, but yeah, if you wanted to, you could do that and have his voice. But I think that the doing like we talked about with the not what the hell is it called? First Class. That was a makeup job on the guy. And I mean, it looked fine. I had no real problem with it, but he was not the like bulky Beast that we're used to. Right. So if you wanted to have Yeah, if
they,
you wanted
they
to have
created a
bulky
very
beast,
nerdy style
he was
of
nerdy
beast.
So if you wanted like bulky beast, like we know, you'd probably have to CG it like the Hulk, and then I think you get the best of both worlds. But then, of course, we all know what happened with Fantastic Four CG of the Thing. What a dumpster pile that was. So CG doesn't always answer your questions.
No,
Sometimes
and
it gives you more.
Like around that time, we had what was it? The Incredible Hulk or Hulk. So no,
Yeah, but
CGI
Hulk is light years ahead, and it isn't because it's decades before. Well, like 10 decades. But if you look at Fantastic Four, the most recent remake, the Thing in that is CG, and it just looks terrible. Like, who is designing this and saying, "Yeah, let's put that on the screen"? What is happening? Maybe it's better than the burn victim version of the original Fantastic Four movies, because those are that plastic suit is the worst. But to look at where the Fantastic Four existed in CG time and know that they gave us that Thing as the Thing, no sir, I don't want it. That's bad. And I'm looking forward to what Marvel does with the Fantastic Four. I'm curious to see how they're going to do this and pull it off. I'm probably more curious about the X-Men. I don't know how you reboot the X-Men. Like Professor X and Magneto and Wolverine, like they're so ingrained in what we understand as X-Men, that if you're going to be like, hey, we're recasting all these roles, because they have to, we're recasting all of these roles to make an X-Men movie.
Especially,
oh man, I don't know how you do that. It's like recasting Tony Stark. I don't know how you do it. And that's going to be the most interesting thing I think that they have to pull off. All the Fantastic Four stuff can be washed away with a good movie, but the X-Men have been around for so long with the same characters, the same actors.
I know a lot of people are
McAvoy
fans of the original team of Marvel, but I don't know. I'm sorry, I cannot.
Look,
they have to find a way to convince me that all four of them can be astronauts.
Oh, Fantastic Four. You said X-Men. You mean Fantastic Four?
My apologies.
Yeah. I don't even know if they have to be. I mean, there's space stuff all over the place in Marvel. Look at what they did with Captain Marvel. They had this space station in space. Space is no big deal for Marvel. They'll figure it out. They'll figure that part out.
Kevin Feige has pretty much shown that the MCU works. He'll find a way.
Yeah. The X-Men, I think, will be the hardest. Because again, you're introducing mutants, which is not something that we really have so far. I mean, we have Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, but they were modified, from their pure mutant stuff. Again, Magneto is her dad. So are you going to bring that in and suddenly Magneto is her dad too? Like that's the X-Men are going to be really difficult, and that's going to be the interesting experiment. Fantastic Four will be easy.
This is going to be kind of a controversial opinion. I always thought the X-Men worked better as their own separate universe. Because it never made sense to me that everybody loves the Avengers but hates the X-Men.
Well, they hate the X-Men because they're different. That's the whole point of the X-Men, is they're mutants.
Right, but really when you think about it, there's not that big of a difference between a mutant and like somebody who just gets their superpowers by accident. I never
there is actually. Because one, and again, it goes back to what the X-Men is based in, which is basically race relations and human rights and so on. Being born with something and being different by being born is different than taking a serum. A bit different than being stuck with a needle, being different than, I don't know, wearing a suit of armor or whatever, right? So there is a difference. It might be, and this goes back to the point of the stories. It's a very thin line, right? In fact, there's a line in the early X Factor books where X Factor shows up to this to whatever it is that they're doing, and the cops are there, and X Factor is disguised as humans, and the cop is like, "Hey, we're sure glad you guys showed up to help us do whatever it is," and Scott, as this X Factor dude, he's like, "Well, yeah, but you could have called the Avengers. They're right around the corner." And the cop is like, "Yeah, we want to call on our own." So even in that case, they were like, "Yeah, the Avengers can suck it. We want to call human people." Like literally human people, which is what X Factor was pretending to be back in the day. So there's a very thin line, and it's existed in the Marvel universe in the comics for a very, very long time.
What about the multiverse? Since the MCU is going to introduce that, maybe that's how they introduce X-Men.
Maybe. But again, the problem isn't introducing them. The problem isn't saying here's X-Men. The problem is, who are you casting as Charles and Magneto and Wolverine? Because we already have had these guys for so long. That's the hard part.
And they're not going to be able to do better than
It'll be difficult. And McAvoy could come back. I mean, if they wanted to, McAvoy could come back. If they wanted to, Fassbender could probably come back. But Logan is gone. Like, that dude, he's done. You have to recast Wolverine. And, again, very, very difficult. How do you recast Tony Stark? You can't.
I have an idea for Scott Summers. I don't know if he will. He has to look. I don't know if he can pull it off acting wise. Scott Eastwood.
Yeah, people have talked about him for Wolverine too. But again, those guys aren't the difficult ones because they've actually already been rebooted into these kid forms, right? So if you go back to the original X-Men, those guys, Famke Janssen and whatever, you can recast those people. But it's the ones that came through the X-Men First Class. It's Wolverine, Professor X, and Magneto. Recasting those three are going to be very, very hard. Because those guys are still fresh. I mean, they were in Dark Phoenix. That was just a couple of years ago. So if you're talking about
become iconic too, it's kind of hard to disassociate those characters from the people.
Exactly. And Blue Chick, Mystique, Jennifer Lawrence, same thing. She's been in all of those movies. So if you're going to recast Mystique, technically, again, Jennifer Lawrence is young enough. She could come back and do it, but I doubt it will happen. So that's going to be the interesting part. The story will be interesting too. Like, how do we put X-Men in here? But who are they going to be? And are we going to look at them and be like, that's not Professor X, man? Like you talked about the Dreamcast, right? Kelsey Grammer. Like, what's the Dreamcast now? Is there such a thing after we've already had these characters for so long? In one form or another. It was like they had Quicksilver, right? Everybody lost their mind because what's his name shows up on Wanda, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, Quicksilver! They're crossing over universes. What's going on?" Nah, forget that. That was a joke. Sorry, guys. So who knows? Who knows what they're going to do?
This has been a really great discussion, and I apologize for keeping you guys so long. Wow, 3 hours and 16 seconds, 16 minutes. Wow, I definitely want to have you guys back for another discussion. Tom, I appreciate your ranting because no, me, like I can rant just as much as you. But yeah, no, I appreciate Brian. Thank you for bringing him on. And suggesting him. Grant, thank you for joining us. I apologize for not talking to you a whole lot, but your opinion does matter. I appreciate you being here. And Nicole, thank you very much for promoting your comics in the classroom bit.
So just a side note on the earlier when we were talking about fandoms and the kind of like little ribbing that happens. So only people, if you follow any Michigan sports, you can understand this because our biggest rival is Ohio. And I get so much shit for being a Wolverine. So much shit because our football team sucks. And so I have to deal with like Buckeyes. Like everybody I know is a damn Buckeye. I'm like, Jesus, go back to Ohio. What is your deal?
Or they
they follow me everywhere.
Or they like the other Michigan team, the Spartans.
Whatever.
Sports is another fandom that can be extremely toxic.
But there is so much shit that I get, and it's a lot of people that just give me a hard time. So like, it's just like that fun ribbing. Like I know that I'm going to get it. And so the guy that I teach with at summer school, he is like, he looked at my cup and he goes, "Oh, you're from Michigan?" And I went, "Yeah, I was born and raised. I went to Michigan." And he's like, "Oh, really?" And I knew where it was going to go next. And I'm like, "Oh, you're an Ohio State fan." And he's like, "Yeah, Buckeyes." And I'm like, "Oh, Jesus." And he's like, so you don't have much else to say. He's like, all Michigan fans, all they can ever say is, "Yeah." So I wanted to add to that. It's like, yes, we get shit, but I can roll with it because I've heard it so much. But It's like, it's basketball's where it's at. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't know. And even then, we're not even that good. But it is what it is.
I'll get just as much flack for being supporting my Winnipeg Jets. Okay, from Toronto Maple Leaf fan, and yet, come on, middle of the pandemic, and this is the time that they actually made it to the playoffs.
Well, we can talk about, just to let you know, with the Stanley Cup Finals, it's probably going to be Vegas and the Tampa Bay Lightning. So,
which makes no sense because in neither place is there any fucking ice.
I wrote off hockey a few years ago when the NHL stole the cup from the Predators. I was mighty pissed. Mighty pissed. And I have not been back.
Oh, man. Yeah. Again, hockey can be just as toxic as any other fandom, and it's funny how much people don't consider hockey as a fandom, and it's like, or any sports as a fandom. Like, you guys compare the two. There's costumers, there's the merchandise.
But the thing is, if you're a true fan, you got to take the good with the bad. So. All the years you're a Pistons fan and they only make the, finals that many times, and you can curse your own turn.
2004, right?
You can curse your own team, but if anybody else says anything about them, then you gotta stand true. It's the same with the Lions. Like, I have my old principal, she's a diehard Lions fan, and I'm like, I don't even understand that, but okay, it's good for you. So, and she's from Ohio, which is really strange. But, I have friends that are Blackhawks fans and, they're like Chicago Bears fans and they haven't won, series or tournaments or anything, in forever or ever. But, you take the harassment and you feel for your team, I think that's just what it is. Like, you feel for your fandom too. It's like,
well, it's
I
funny.
like it. So kiss my ass.
Tom loves the Chargers and I grew up in San Diego.
Another one of my teams that got robbed in the championship game. God damn. I still can't believe that this has not come out in football. Listen, this was a team, the 49ers were built illegally that year. Illegally. The following years, it all came out. The team was decimated, destroyed, and torn apart and didn't come back for almost 20 years to the playoffs. But everybody still is like, yeah, Steve Young, man. No, BS. You built an illegal team and you robbed the Chargers. I have no opinions.
It's been great having you on. Where can people find you and what do you have coming up?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook. I basically live on Facebook, guys. So you can find me here. I mean, right here, you can see. It's this. Just put in those keywords. You'll find me here on Facebook. Twitter and Instagram is BDI Comics. But basically, I live here on Facebook. This is where we do most of our stuff. At Big Dog Comic. And what's coming up? Basically, Albuquerque Comic Con, like we talked about earlier. Albuquerque Comic Con is next, not this weekend, but next weekend. We have Camp Rad Dog coming up with myself and Jim Noble in July. That's our dueling Kickstarter event. And then I'll be doing some conventions in August and, just kind of keep pushing through here.
Awesome. And Grant, what about you? Where can people find you? I know you have a Kickstarter going on right now, right?
Right. Let me see if I can put it in the comments. It doesn't look like I can. If I put it in the private chat, will you guys put it in the?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, so I have Beowulf is up on Kickstarter now. Sorry, I'm trying to copy and paste and talk at the same time. You can go to monarchpublishing.net to get updates. You can sign up for my newsletter and you'll get updates on what's going on with Beowulf and other future comic books that I might do.
Right, so there's the Kickstarter link there. And then there's anchordesign.com.
Thank you, Willow.
No worries.
And for us, you can find us on Reels and Heels here on Facebook and YouTube on the HWS Web TV every Saturday at 2:15 Eastern. And it's been great to be on Willow's Pillow Talk. It's been a while since we've been on Pillow Talk.
And you can find me and more of Comics in the Classroom at Comics in the Classroom FL.
And then you have some pretty cool things lined up that will be discussed.
I have some fun stuff happening. So it's kind of a whirlwind right now, and it's all getting sorted out. So it'll be exciting to kind of make things happen. So.
Yeah. That'll be announced on June 27th. So,
well, that stuff will be announced on June 27th. But we have awesome stuff happening at Suncoast Suncoast Fan Fest, and I'm going to interview someone that I can't talk about right now.
And if you are planning on attending Suncoast Fan Fest, shout out to our sponsor, you can get 10% off your tickets if you use the code Hanging21. All right. So, I am the Hanging With Web program director, though I didn't really do my job very well today. I usually try to update everybody on all the podcasts that are happening, and I was up since 5 a.m. this morning with work. So you guys can find me all over social media. I am the social media socialite, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram. I know there's a MySpace somewhere in
Pretty sure we all have one of those.
So yes, you can find me everywhere.
Did you know that Justin Timberlake owns MySpace?
Okay, before we get into another conversation, let's end this.
All right, so we're gonna end the show here, but just before we go, I'm gonna play this video.
I'm GW Pomager.
I'm Dina Marie. I'm Sage Ia.
I'm Thomas Carter Rochester.
Hey, I'm David Thompson.
Hi, I'm Kevin.
And I'm Mia.
Hi, I'm Mark.
Hey there, this is Dave Adams.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Rose.
Jerome Conner here.
Hey guys, it's Josh Bauer.
It's Willow Schuyler.
I'm Cosplay Michael.
Abba. It's your boy Country.
I'm Ryan Permison.
And I'd like to ask you guys,
please subscribe.
Please subscribe.
Please subscribe.
Please subscribe.
Please subscribe.
Please subscribe.
Please, please, please
subscribe.
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 Please subscribe to HWWS
Web TV.
Great bunch of people.
And don't forget to smash the bell.
Ring that bell.
Smash that bell.
Hit that bell.
Hit the bell to be notified.
Hit the bell to get notified of new shows
and videos.
You're going to want to do that, so do that soon. So we can cross that 20,000 mark.
And get us to 100,000 subscribers.
To 1 million, and 10 million, and 100 million.
On HWWS.
Web TV.
You really like it. I guarantee it.
Thank you.
All right, you guys all have a wonderful night. Thank you for joining me and on this random show. I wasn't even sure what was going to happen. So you guys have a great night. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.